Chapter 26:13. Let's do it, they're from the Divine Demon Sect, Life and Death Tower, and Dongfang Clan. The purple-robed supervisor's heart shook. Danyang, Holy Domain has been a mess since Crimson Stone Saint's death. The top cultivation sects have always been competing covertly against each other, and very few of them would fight overtly. However, a Huangji golden pill was all it took to make them fight. Senior Meng sneered and continued, "No matter how fierce they might be fighting, it has nothing to do with the star-picking pavilion, of course. What caught my interest is the stately painting. I don't know if the stately painting's owner will appear in this battle." The battle had reached a feverish stage. Although the strong lineup of experts from Nanwu Palace caused a commotion, they were not the only ones who came well prepared. The Divine Demon Sect, Life and Death Tower, and Dongfeng Clan had also come prepared. The three top cultivation sects took action at the same time, and it was worth mentioning that they were working tacitly. Nanwu Palace fell into a disadvantage under the pressure of those three top sections. In the void outside the battlefield, Jian Wushuang was closely watching the battle. There are dozens of Heaven Ultimate Gods and 5 Grand Ultimate Gods in this battle. There's nothing I can do to disturb the battle, not even a chance for me to fish in troubled waters. Jian Wushuang frowned. It's almost impossible for me to sneak into the battlefield with so many pairs of eyes watching and kill the young palace master of Nanwu Palace for his interspatial ring unless I use that trick. Jian Wushuang groaned secretly. He still had a trump card, which was something extremely terrifying and unusual. It was very risky for him to play that card because of its extraordinary and shocking nature. He might fall into a dead end should anything go very wrong. Therefore, he hesitated and struggled to make a decision. However, he did not take long to make his decision. I finally found the stately painting, and it's now with the Nanwu Palace's young palace master. Even if any of those on the battlefield manage to get it today, they will not be able to claim ownership. Hence, there will be a possibility it might be transferred to another person. It'll be extremely difficult for me to locate it again if it goes to a high-ranking and powerful expert. I can't miss it since the opportunity is right in front of me now. Let's do it. A hint of madness was driving Jian Wushuang to make the decision, but he was also quite determined. Thereafter, his figure slowly receded into the void behind. He retreated to an extremely quiet and empty place before changing his outfit. Initially, he was wearing a golden robe while carrying a long sword without masking his appearance and looking very young. However, he soon had turned into a mysterious expert, completely shrouded in a black robe with a black, ferocious-looking mask over his face. He had completely kept his breath of power concealed while leaving no traces that could reveal his identity. He then slowly walked towards the battlefield. The war was still going on fiercely on the battlefield. The brawny red-bearded man from Nanwu Palace furiously said, "Divine Demon Sect, Life and Death Tower, and Dongfang Clan. Well, you'd better make sure I leave my body behind on this battlefield today. Otherwise, it'll make the 3 of you pay the price." The Grand Ultimate God from Divine Demon Sect coldly exclaimed, "Ha, are you threatening us? Do you think Nanwu Palace is the Crimson Stone Fort? Even if it's the Crimson Stone Fort, it's now in a mess and can no longer threaten us. What can a small Nanwu Palace do? Don't talk nonsense with him anymore and just kill him. The Nanwu Palace won't hand over the Huangji Golden Pill obediently if we don't teach him a lesson," said the Grand Ultimate God from Dongfang Clan. "Yes, although we probably can't kill both Grand Ultimate Gods of Nanwu Palace, we can still find ways to kill the Heaven Ultimate Gods and their young palace master. I bet the palace master will go crazy if the young palace master died," said a cold old man with a sneer. He was the Life and Death Tower's Grand Ultimate God. "Haha, let's kill them." The experts from the three top sects were no longer holding back and began fighting without reservation. Countless experts watched the battle, but none dared to intervene. It was at that moment a black-robed man with a black, ferocious-looking mask emerged slowly from the surrounding void and walked towards the battlefield. They could not sense the black-robed man's aura, and no one even noticed him when he first appeared in the void. The people around him finally noticed his presence when he appeared at the battlefield's peripheral. Who's that person? Is he fighting for the Huangji Golden Pill as well? Black robe? Black mask? He's probably worried that these top sects will one day seek revenge with him, so he deliberately covers up his appearance. Maybe he's not that strong after all. Although many experts had noticed the black-robed man, they did not pay much attention to him. The Huangji Golden Pill was of great use to Heaven Ultimate Gods and even Grand Ultimate Gods. It had attracted the attention of the many experts on the battlefield, hence it did not raise caution that someone else was also interested. The people who were watching the battle and the experts who were madly slaying away on the battlefield both felt the same, with no one taking the black-robed man seriously. The black-robed man walked to the edge of the battlefield and slowly stopped. Next, boom! A unique but supreme pressure came from the black-robed man, without warning. The pressure was not from the breath of divine power, nor was it the divine aura. Instead, it was coming from his life rating, the type of pressure from a supreme being. The black-robed man discharged the pressure, and it instantly spread into the 9 skies and 10 earths before completely enshrouding the world. Heaven and earth were instantly shaken up as the huge world and space-time were disrupted and violently shook. The violent wind was so strong that it was driving the world and everything else within the world to worship that black-robed man. The battle that was going on seemed to have instantly died down due to the emergence of his life rating pressure. All the experts from Nanmo Palace, Divine Demon Sect, Life and Death Tower, and Dongfang Clan were staring at Jian Wushuang along with those heavenly ultimate gods and 5 grand ultimate gods. Their eyes showed an inconceivable horror and terror. Their bodies were trembling. Thump, thump. Everyone started kneeling. Chapter 26:14. Life conquers all. In addition to those people who fought on the battlefield, many experts and Earth ultimate gods who stood watching from a distance outside the battlefield, including a few Heaven ultimate gods, all knelt with their eyes widened in surprise. Even Star-Picking Pavilion's purple-robed supervisor and his 3 golden chiefs in the secluded void could not control their legs, joining the others in kneeling. The only person barely enduring the pressure and keeping himself from kneeling was Senior Meng. This pressure, even I can barely stop myself from kneeling? Senior Meng stared at his trembling legs and took a sharp breath of cold air. He was a genuine undying saint, and also the most powerful expert at that moment. That was probably the reason he was able to keep himself up. In addition, he was quite far away from the battlefield where the life rating pressure was mainly asserting on before disseminated to its surrounding void. Therefore, it was not as strong in his current location, and somewhat allowed him to resist the pressure. However, he truly felt fear in him. This person, Senior Meng, looked with a terrified expression at the mysterious black-robed man who was at the edge of the battlefield. The other experts present had also stopped what they were doing and turned their attention to that black-robed man. The experts, including the 5 grand ultimate gods from those 4 top sects, were frantically struggling to stand up but appeared weak under the extreme life rating pressure. They felt as though they were not facing a human cultivator, but the boundless world or universe, as though they were just some unremarkable ants in the infinitely wide world. Expert, super expert. Is he an undying saint? No, even an undying saint will never be able to oppress grand ultimate gods like us and force us to worship him on our knees. His oppressive pressure is so extraordinary and nothing like divine power. It's something even more terrifying and intimidating than divine power pressure. It's not something within the capabilities of an undying saint. This person is definitely above the undying saint. A super expert above the undying saint. My goodness! Could he be after the Huangji golden pill as well? That can't be right. Even if it's a treasure worth 100 or even 1,000 times more valuable than the Huangji golden pill, it's insignificant in the face of such a powerful person, let alone the Huangji golden pill. The experts were soon in suffocation. Their bodies trembled from feeling terrified, but no one dared to utter even a single word. They could only grumble and complain in their hearts while trying to guess the reason such a super expert was there. None dared to speak for fear of irritating the super expert. The battlefield fell into complete silence with those countless experts surrendering themselves to the mysterious black-robed expert. Suddenly, the mysterious black-robed expert moved. He moved slowly like he was sauntering in a garden and arrived at the battlefield center in just a few steps. He went up to the Nanwu Palace's young palace master. The Nanwu Palace's young palace master was no longer in his usual posture as he was prostrating with his head hung low without even daring to look up at the mysterious black-robed expert. Nanwu Palace's young palace master remained in that posture until the mysterious black-robed expert finally stopped in front of him. The black-robed expert slowly stretched out his palm. The young palace master was frightened and said, "Sir, I've already given the Huangji golden pill to Elder Hung. The Huangji golden pill is with that person over there." The young palace master pointed his finger to the blond youth next to him, who was one of the grand ultimate gods from Nanwu Palace. The young palace master thought that Huangji golden pill might not be safe in his hands. Hence he had given it to the Nanwu Palace grand ultimate god for safekeeping before the battle. He thought the mysterious black-robed expert was after the Huangji golden pill, so he pointed the mysterious black-robed expert toward it. Unexpectedly, the mysterious black-robed expert did not even glance at the blond youth. His exposed cold eyes remained looking down on the young palace master. His low and hoarse voice emerged from behind the mask. "The stately painting in your hand. Hand over it now, and it'll spare your life." The stately painting? The Nanwu Palace young palace master was startled. The experts present were stunned. Everyone thought the mysterious black-robed expert was also after the Huangji golden pill, but they were surprised that his target was the stately painting. Did he say his stately painting? Many of them reflected on the mysterious black-robed expert's words. Senior Meng's eyes were twinkling in the void not far away. So, it's exactly as I expected. The stately painting indeed has a master and someone who can maneuver. Such a holy treasure must be a great cultivator, probably a top-tier undying saint. He's probably someone invincible who surpasses the undying saint level. His appearance even made an undying saint like me feel compelled to kneel and worship him despite such a far distance between both of us. This level of strength must have exceeded the level of an undying saint. He's indeed an invincible expert. I didn't expect to see a super expert like this again in my lifetime. I can now die without regrets. Senior Meng softly sighed. The still kneeling star-picking tower purple-robed executive and his 3 golden chiefs behind Senior Meng were so cautious they dared not even breath out loudly. "What's going on? Did you not hear what I've said?" The black-robed man spoke again with a flat voice. "And no, I've heard it. The stately painting is with me. I'll immediately take it out." The young palace master dared not hesitate and immediately retrieved the old and browned painting from his interspatial ring, the stately painting which he bought from the auction at the price of 1,300,000,000 primordial stones. He initially bought the painting out of curiosity and thought of bringing it home with him to try claiming ownership of it. It was only at that moment he realized the stately painting already had an owner. Its master was someone incredibly powerful. Chapter 26:15. Finally got Itnamu Palace's young palace master took out the stately painting, an old picture scroll that was originally yellowish with faded prints, and instantly shot a ray-dazzling light. There was no need for the black-robed man to do anything, as the picture scroll instantly turned into a light stream and flew toward the black-robed man. The stately painting zoomed toward the black-robed man before excitedly going round and round the black-robed man. It looked like a child who had just been reunited with its parents after being separated for 2 or 3 days. The many experts present on and around the battlefield were no longer doubtful. The stately painting belonged to the mysterious black-robed man, for sure. Otherwise, it would not have zoomed toward the black-robed man and excitedly went around him. The black-robed man gently beckoned the stately painting as it turned into a ray of light before fusing into his divine body and disappeared. The black-robed man raised his head slightly and glanced around the battlefield after that. "I'm only here to retrieve my lost treasure. You may carry on. I won't be participating." He spoke in his low and slightly hoarse voice before turning around in front of countless experts and slowly strode toward the distant void. The black-robed man slowly walked off 1 step at a time and was moving around very casually, but even so, the countless experts in the void remained in kneeling position with none dared to breathe out loud. In the void, the star-picking pavilion purple-robed supervisor reminded, "He's leaving Senior Meng." Senior Meng nodded slightly and thought of catching up with the black-robed expert to befriend him. However, he quickly dismissed that thought. Firstly, Senior Meng reckoned the mysterious black-robed expert was extremely strong. The expert was much stronger than Senior Meng's original assumptions, as such a super expert could easily destroy the entire star-picking pavilion with just a flip of his hand. Although Senior Meng was an undying saint himself, he knew he was merely a firefly when compared to the mysterious black-robed expert, who was bright like the moon. Senior Meng had some self-awareness. If he knew that the other party was an undying saint, Senior Meng would not mind going forth to make friends with him, even if he was somewhat an invincible undying saint like the Sword Lord Tong Xian. However, he could not simply make a move towards someone above the undying saint realm. In other words, he was not qualified to be associated with such powerful beings as an undying saint. Secondly, even if Senior Meng wanted to force himself on the other party without minding his identity and be acquainted with him, he had to be able to move his body first. Although the black-robed expert was slowly leaving the void, the supreme life-rating pressure on Senior Meng did not get any lesser. Senior Meng was standing still under the pressure. He did not kneel like the others around him. He was trembling and stood in place just like the others. What could he do when he was unable to even move? After a while, the mysterious, black-robed expert finally disappeared from everyone's sight. The life-rating pressure that flooded heaven and earth finally dissipated. Once the pressure disappeared, the many experts present felt a sense of relief. All of them let out a long sigh and slowly stood up. However, their limbs were still trembling despite being able to move freely and stand up again. That was scary. The Earth Ultimate Gods, Heaven Ultimate Gods, and those 5 grand Ultimate Gods present had never encountered such a terrifying expert in their cultivation journey thus far. They had never experienced such great fears just from the pressures exerted by the other party. It was their first time. Who's that person just now? I don't know, but he's a bewildering super expert. He's probably a top-tier super expert in the infinite territory, or maybe even in the legendary third heaven. He's too terrifying. I felt my soul about to completely shatter just moments ago. I've lived for a few 100,000 years, and that's the first time I'm so horrified. All the experts started a discussion. In the middle of the battlefield, the experts from Nanwu Palace, Divine Demon Sect, Life and Death Tower, and Dongfang clan looked miserable. However, soon their expressions eased and had gradually recovered. The master is a powerful expert that came only for his treasure. He left after retrieving his treasure and was not interested in the Huangji Golden Pill at all. The Huangji Golden Pill is still with Nanwu Palace, said the elder from Life and Death Tower coldly, whose voice echoed on the battlefield. The two grand ultimate gods from Divine Demon Sect and Dongfang clan peeked over. The experts from those three powerful sects exchanged looks before kill. The war broke out again. Although the appearance of the mysterious black-robed expert gave them a shock, he left after retrieving the stately painting. The Huangji Golden Pill was not taken away, so the battle over the pill was unaffected. The three top sects joined forces and once again fought madly against the people from Nanwu Palace. The battlefield became fiery hot again. Let's go. Senior Meng turned around and headed toward the star-picking pavilion. Senior Meng, this battle, the purple-robed supervisor was surprised. I'm here only to see the stately painting's owner. There's no need for me to be around, since I've seen him. You may stay and watch the battle for the Huangji Golden Pill, if you like. Senior Meng smiled and left. There was a dense forest quite far away in a void from the battlefield. The man who wore a black, ferocious-looking mask on his face, and assumed by many to be a super-expert superior to an undying saint, appeared in the void and went straight into the dense forest. The mysterious black-robed expert stayed low for a long time deep in the dense forest. After he made sure there was no one following him, he took off the mask and revealed an extremely young face. He was none other than Jian Wushuang. I've taken a huge risk and won the bet. I was right. Jian Wushuang clasped his hands tightly. He was trembling slightly from excitement as his eyes gleamed with a look of surprise. The old and yellowish picture scroll appeared in his hands with just a thought. Stately painting old mate, I've finally found you. Jian Wushuang smiled. Although he was smiling happily, his back was soaking wet with sweat. Chapter 26:16. Third heaven before the many experts. He looked majestic and intimidating at the scene, with heaven ultimate gods and grand ultimate gods surrendered under his feet. But he was also on the cusp of what could be a storm, as all he had was the supreme life rating pressure. His true strength was far inferior to anyone on that battlefield. Any random heaven ultimate gods were enough to crush him. Therefore, he had to maintain an imposing posture without allowing any room for mistakes. Otherwise, he would not be able to leave the battlefield safely, let alone retrieve his stately painting once his strength level was exposed. He had simply done a very good job at disguising himself to the extent that those experts on the battlefield had completely believed him to be an invincible super expert. The extremely powerful life rating pressure he exerted was, of course, the crux behind his disguise. Even Crimson Stone's saint knelt when he unleashed his life rating pressure in the saint's tomb. Hence it was tried and tested that even an undying saint could not withstand the pressure he exerted. That made the experts on the battlefield believe Jian Wushuang must be an extremely powerful super expert to be able to display such terrifying pressure. In addition, he was a perfect chaotic creature who had exceptional abilities in manipulating his divine power breath. No one would be able to discover his real cultivation realm as long as he did not take actions to reveal his divine power level, including heaven ultimate gods, grand ultimate gods, and the undying saints in seclusion. None of them could see Jian Wushuang's real cultivation realm. The unknown and ambiguity built a daunting experience for those experts on the battlefield. Those 2 points convinced the experts on the battlefield that Jian Wushuang was indeed a super expert. In addition, Jian Wushuang did very well in his disguise, as he had not hesitated to leave the battlefield upon receiving the stately painting. The Nanwu Palace's young palace master would have no qualms handing over the Huangji golden pill, and Jian Wushuang could have gotten the Huangji golden pill had he asked pushingly. If he had done so, it might have raised doubts about his true identity. The Huangji golden pill was only useful for the ultimate gods after all. He was trying to portray himself as a super expert who was superior to undying saints. So why would he even care for a Huangji golden pill at his level? Even if he were to get one for his disciples, he did not need to snatch the pill from those groups of experts. Countless forces and sects might be vying to give him the Huangji golden pill upon his request. Matters might have taken a different route had those experts been dubious of Jian Wushuang's identity. Therefore, Jian Wushuang was very clear with what he wanted and was not greedy for the Huangji golden pill. He merely turned around and left after getting the stately painting, which only made the entire process of retrieving his stately painting and evacuation went smoothly. Although I've successfully obtained the stately painting, I've also displayed my strongest trump card, the life-rating pressure of a perfect chaotic creature. The pressure would have probably alerted the will of Heavenly Way. Jian Wushuang calmed down before raising his head and looked at the void above. Taoist Xian Shen once told him that he must not display his life-rating pressure unless it was necessary. The will of Heavenly Way would be alerted of his existence once he displayed that skill. Although it was not a life or death situation, the stately painting was very important to him, and he would not want to miss it. He decided to take the risk and perform the technique after carefully considering the pros and cons. This place is far away from the third heaven, which made the will of Heavenly Way relatively weak. As this is the first time I'm using it, it will be relatively difficult to locate where I am, even if I've alerted the will of Heavenly Way. It'll just need to be cautious and abstain from displaying this technique for the second time, murmured Jian Wushuang. Taoist Xian Shen had also mentioned before that if he used the technique outside of third heaven once or twice, it would be relatively hard for the will of Heavenly Way to detect his location. At the time, there were no changes from heaven above and earth below when he exerted his life-rating pressure. He probably managed to avoid being detected since there was no pressure convergence from the will of Heavenly Way. However, if that happens again, I must immediately leave the Danyang Holy Domain and go as far away as I can, even if the will of Heavenly Way doesn't come after me, said Jian Wushuang solemnly. He had too much on his shoulder and could not afford to lose, so he had to be cautious not to make even a slight mistake. Otherwise, it might cause a detrimental effect on himself, the Seven Stars Black Sect, and the eternal chaotic world. Let's leave here first and find a place to regain control over the stately painting, muttered Jian Wushuang, who soon left the forest. The third heaven, where countless experts yearned to be, was located somewhere in an extremely remote territory, somewhere within the third heaven's core. On a dojo's high platform, the white-robed bald man who was preaching to billions of divine demons immediately and suddenly felt something after Jian Wushuang exerted his life-rating pressure. It's indeed outside of the third heaven. The white-robed bald man spoke faintly, but his voice was inaudible to the billions of divine demons who were listening to his lecture. His voice instead reached the ears of several other realm lords under the guidance of his subconscious mind. In a bloodied space, the cold and beautiful woman softly replied, "This is troublesome. The infinite territory is outside the third heaven, where the will of Heavenly Way is weak and our influences are hard to reach. Even if we know he's right there in the infinite territory, we won't be able to find him." In the eternal burning flame, the purple-armored devil awakened as a cold voice came from him. "There's nothing we can do now. We can only continue waiting for the day he steps out of the infinite territory and arrives in the third heaven. Another option will be when he uses his special techniques in the infinite territory again and is detected by the will of Heavenly Way. As long as the will of Heavenly Way can roughly pinpoint his location, even if it's only a vague direction or guidance, I'm sure we can hunt him down. The blood-clothed woman laughed casually in an exquisite mansion. Oh, we can only wait then, but I'm sure he's not stupid. If he knows he's targeted by the will of Heavenly Way, he won't use this unique technique in the future again. I'm afraid it's not realistic for him to do so again, but we can wait for him to set foot in the third heaven one day, as it'll be much easier to find him then. Well, let's adjourn for now. The purple-armored devil spoke again before his voice faded away. The 4 very powerful realm lords were communicating with each other over a long distance, and all of them went back to what they were doing after a short exchange. Chapter 26:17. Thousand Treasures Grand World. There was a cave that was temporarily hewn up in a barren and desolate mountain range. Jian Wushuang sat cross-legged in the cave, while the stately painting quietly suspended in midair before him. The stately painting was his treasure and had a long-standing relationship with him. Thus it was easy for him to regain control of the stately painting when refining it again. A large amount of information was channeled into his mind after that. So that's it. Jian Wushuang looked a little surprised. I was too weak in my past life. Although I possessed the stately painting, I couldn't bring out its full potential. What I could do is only some insignificant techniques, even if it's a secret technique within the stately painting. In the previous life, Jian Wushuang had only performed the 9 provinces seal. That technique was extremely tyrannical. However, Jian Wushuang quickly realized the 9 provinces seal was not the only secret technique available in the stately painting. 4 secret techniques came along with the stately painting. Among the 4 secret techniques, the 9 provinces seal was the easiest technique to comprehend and perform. Besides that, Jian Wushuang probably had not completely mastered the 9 provinces seal in his previous life, as he no longer felt the 9 provinces seal being as difficult as he had thought in his past life. In his past life, he only knew the 9 provinces seal represented the 9 provinces in heaven and earth, consisting of 9 styles, with one being more powerful than the other. However, the 9 provinces seal's essence laid in the styles being superimposed and fused. The first 3 styles were fused to achieve the Divine Emperor seal. The next 3 styles were to make the True Emperor seal. The last 3 styles, on the other hand, would achieve the most powerful Supreme Seal. The Divine Emperor Seal, True Emperor Seal, and Supreme Seal were the 3 most terrifying hidden styles of the 9 provinces seal. It was a pity that he could not even fully display the last 3 styles of the 9 provinces seal in his previous life, let alone fusing and superimposing them. He had never come in contact with the Divine Emperor Seal, True Emperor Seal, or Supreme Seal. He was finally qualified to come in contact with them in his current life. Jian Wushuang secretly said, "I can easily execute all 9 styles in the 9 provinces seal with my current strength. It shouldn't be difficult for me to display the Divine Emperor Seal, True Emperor Seal, and Supreme Seal, but it'll take me some time to study them." In addition to the 9 province seal, there was another secret technique he could display among the 4 secret techniques. The 1,000 Treasures Grand World secret technique. The 1,000 Treasures Grand World transformation. That was a technique that forcibly transformed the world into one more suitable for battle. There were many different worlds in the 1,000 Treasures Grand World. The Life and Death World, Yin and Yang World, and Water and Fire World. In addition, there were also conducive battle worlds for Jian Wushuang, Space-Time World, Transmigration World, and Sword Principle World. Even though mastering that technique might not improve his overall strength by much, it was enough to make a change in his battle strategies. The 9 Provinces Seal and 1,000 Treasures Grand World are just 2 secret techniques in stately painting which I can study and perform now. The remaining 2 secret techniques in the stately painting aren't something I'm capable of doing now, murmured Jian Wushuang. He knew the stately painting was so precious and extremely difficult to obtain one in the entire ancient god domain. Hence the secret techniques which came with it were not something easily executed. It would be extremely helpful to him, nonetheless, if he was able to master the 9 Provinces Seal and 1,000 Treasures Grand World. Let's begin studying then. Jian Wushuang anticipatingly began studying the 3 superimposed seals of the 9 Provinces Seal, as well as the 1,000 Treasures Grand World. 3 years passed by in a flash. Jian Wushuang's eyes slowly opened up inside that cave. The 3 fusion seals within the 9 Provinces Seal are much more difficult than I thought. I've been studying for 3 years, yet I've just barely fused the first 3 styles of the 9 Provinces Seal. I can fundamentally display the Divine Emperor's Seal, but not to its full potential. I'm afraid it'll take me a long time to study the remaining true Emperor's Seal and the Supreme Seal. The 1,000 Treasures Grand World is much easier for me to comprehend on the contrary, and I've already got most of it under my control. Jian Wushuang smiled faintly before immediately standing up. Let's go outside and try it. Jian Wushuang then walked out of the cave and came to the vast void. He took a deep breath and waved his hand as a ray of light instantly melted into the surrounding void, followed by the world being transformed. A wonderful scroll painting world appeared out of thin air above the infinite sky. Jian Wushuang saw the scroll painting world and grinned. Under his subconscious control, soon, 1,000 Treasures Grand World, Transmigration World. Rumbling, his surroundings instantly began to transform. It was originally a barren mountain range, but had become complete darkness in the blink of an eye. Huge reincarnation passages appeared out of thin air, one after another inside this darkness. The reincarnation passages were scattered in every corner of the world as the endless transmigration strength spread. That was a transmigration world filled with endless transmigration strength, with Jian Wushuang standing at the core of the transmigration world as the world's master. So, this the 1,000 Treasures Grand World. Jian Wushuang was pleased upon seeing the changes in the surrounding world into the transmigration world before him. The transmigration world conjured from the 1,000 Treasures Grand World was completely different from a principal world. The principal world was discharged from one's own body to oppress and frighten the opponent. On the other hand, the transmigration world conjured from the 1,000 Treasures Grand World was to transform the world and its surrounding environment into a state most conducive for the user to fight. The transmigration world would be perfect for Jian Wushuang to manipulate the transmigration law to its fullest and even exert a combat power far exceeding his own, since he had comprehended transmigration law. Such was the so-called environmental advantage. Various geographical factor advantages could determine the victor between 2 almost equal in combat strength opponents. 1,000 Treasures Grand World was able to place its user at an absolute geographical advantage. Moreover, the world conjured from 1,000 Treasures Grand World was mysterious for being able to create various changes in attacks. However, Jian Wushuang had only gained preliminary control and could not perfectly use the 1,000 Treasures Grand World. In the future, he could try using it to create a world with both space-time and transmigration as his control over the 1,000 Treasures Grand World becomes stronger. Perhaps one day he could also add in the Sword World. There was no doubt that the 1,000 Treasures Grand World would be more helpful to him in the future when compared to the 9 Provinces Seal. Chapter 26:18. Heaven's Edge Jian Wushuang returned to the cave he was at earlier after getting acquainted with the Thousand Treasures grand world. He sat down cross-legged, with the stately painting no longer in front of him. He had the transmigration sword formation and strange golden stone he got from the auction for a great price instead. Jian Wushuang first looked at the golden stone. What exactly is in this golden stone? Jian Wushuang held the golden stone while his soul power penetrated it to have a good look at its insides. He continued investigating for nearly half an hour before finally withdrawing his soul power. I sense space-time quivering in this golden stone. It's indeed extraordinary and probably has something within, but is my strength still too weak at the moment? Or is my space-time law understanding too shallow? Why can't I see anything? Jian Wushuang murmured. He shook his head before deciding not to spend more time on the golden stone and turned his gaze to the transmigration sword formation. The extremely powerful transmigration sword formation was created by the sword Lord Tong Xian, who was invincible among undying saints many years ago. He managed to get his hand on the transmigration sword formation's first 4 volumes after spending 40 million primordial stones on them. Hence, he expected to gain something useful from it. Let's take a look first. Jian Wushuang unleashed his soul power into the jade slip. His mind received a vast amount of messages in an instant as a picture concurrently appeared in his mind. There were 4 scenes in total, with each being a scene of an expert casting a type of sword formation. Jian Wushuang could see the power of those sword formations very clearly and was surprised. Jian Wushuang opened his eyes again after a while. So this is Sword Lord Tongxin's creation. This is what made him invincible those days in the ancient god domain. The transmigration sword formation is truly powerful, with its first 4 volumes alone already extremely powerful. However, a more powerful technique also brings an equally elevated difficulty in its execution, as it demands a high understanding of the transmigration law and sword principles, said Jian Wushuang. The first 4 volumes of the transmigration sword formation, the first sword formation, Heaven's Edge, the second sword formation, all sank. The third sword formation, Transmigration Drunk, the fourth sword formation, Frozen World, the first sword formation, Heaven's Edge, required merit achievement in the sword world and the first stage understanding of the transmigration law. Jian Wushuang's current understanding of the sword principle and transmigration was just sufficient to execute that sword formation. In other words, he could only at best attempt to perform the first sword formation. The sword formation was proven to be powerful at that. Jian Wushuang began to carefully study this first sword formation without hesitation. The transmigration sword formation was extremely profound, requiring a very high level of understanding and talent to apprehend it. The first sword formation itself was difficult for many cultivators who were good at sword principles and transmigration law. Many spent hundreds or even thousands of years, but could barely apprehend it. Even Jian Wushuang had to spend 2 years in full effort and focus on doing it right to apprehend the very first sword formation. Jian Wushuang stood alone on the barren ground 2 years later, his mind power at work as a stream of light immediately appeared in front of him. The light stream was a longsword with 9 handles, with each handle filled with transmigration strength. Go! Jian Wushuang pointed a finger at the 9 long swords floating in front of him as they evolved into 9 huge reincarnation passages. Those 9 reincarnation passages were like large and mysterious black holes. Those 9 black holes charged at the void up front under Jian Wushuang's guidance with extremely great powers, such that the void shuddered wherever they passed. 9 swords become 1, Heaven's Edge. Jian Wushuang commanded. Any one of those black holes could easily annihilate an Earth ultimate god. At Jian Wushuang's command, They overlapped in an instant and formed a huge and endless reincarnation passage, in which a black sword with transmigration strength shot out suddenly and violently from the passage end. The black sword instantly went through the mountain ranges, in front like heaven's edge. The black sword disintegrated and turned into the 9 black holes once again after passing through several mountains before returning to Jian Wushuang's side. Jian Wushuang was shocked when he saw the penetrated mountains before him. Jian Wushuang exclaimed, "This is indeed powerful, as I didn't even use much strength. I should be able to easily handle any Earth Ultimate Gods, including peak Earth Ultimate Gods. Besides, I've only used 9 ordinary swords in the sword formation with some low-level earthly treasures. They aren't even powerful divine weapons, and nowhere fit to perform transmigration law techniques. The power of this sword formation will skyrocket if I can get 9 identical swords that can make full use of transmigration law." Jian Wushuang held his hands together. He did not have divine weapons suitable for transmigration techniques, but believed the star-picking pavilion should have them. Jian Wushuang immediately left and headed directly to the star-picking pavilion. Although he had fled after retrieving the stately painting, he remained in the Narcissus territory and was not too far from star-picking pavilion. He would at most need to travel several days before arriving at the star-picking pavilion. Jian Wushuang arrived at the star-picking pavilion again a few days later. In a separate room within star-picking pavilion. Oh, so Nanwu Palace took the Huangji golden pill. Jian Wushuang sat on a stool while sipping tea and smiling faintly at the star-picking pavilion's black chief. He appeared halfway through the battle for the Huangji golden pill and caused a scene, but the battle continued as soon as he left, and he expected the result to be finalized on that day. Although Nanwu Palace ended up having the Huangji golden pill, they paid a large price for it. Half of their heaven ultimate gods, about 6, were sacrificed, and one of their 2 grand ultimate gods seriously injured, said the Black Chief. "Did you say 6 heaven ultimate god were sacrificed?" Jian Wushuang secretly smacked his tongue before asking, "What about the young palace master? What happened to him?" The Black Chief continued, "He's all right. Although his strength isn't that great with his just average abilities, he's after all the Nanwu Palace's young palace master, the son of Nanwu Palace Master. The other top 3 powers dare not kill him. Otherwise, the Nanwu Palace Master will go crazy and break into a war against the 3 other factions. This isn't something the top factions want to see." Chapter 2619. Infernal Crimson Gen. Wushuang nodded in agreement after hearing that. Although the top factions in Danyang Holy Realm occasionally competed against each other, things had not truly turned ugly between them. Although Nanwu Palace had sacrificed a few heaven ultimate gods in return for the Huangji golden pill, they were willing to accept such a fate. However, matters might be different if Nanwu Palace lost one of their grand ultimate gods or the young palace master, as that might lead to tensions between the top factions. Crimson Stone Fort would be the one reaping benefits if that happened. "I'm here to buy a sword-type divine weapon that must be suitable for transmigration law," said Jian Wushuang. "Master, you want it for the transmigration sword formation, right?" The Black Chief peered at Jian Wushuang. "You're right. It's for the transmigration sword formation," admitted Jian Wushuang. No one else knew Jian Wushuang had bagged the transmigration sword formation besides the Black Chief, as he was the one who served Jian Wushuang. He would never release the news to the public due to Star-Picking Pavilion's strict customers' privacy policy. Any Star-Picking Pavilion's chiefs arbitrarily disclosed their customers' information to the public or pulled any tricks when trading with customers would be executed once convicted with no room for struggles or sophistry. The Black Chief said, "There are several types of swords in the Star-Picking Pavilion that are suitable for the transmigration sword formation with varying strength. The most powerful one among them is the Infernal Crimson Divine Sword. Are you interested? Let me have a look, said Jian Wushuang. The Black Chief soon unsheathed a black longsword and showed it to Jian Wushuang. The black longsword was less than 3 feet long, with an extremely thin and sharp blade. The blade was smooth and plain without any mysterious patterns or carvings. However, there was a blood-stained line running through the entire sword from the blade's center, which made the sword seem extremely cold and eerie. The black longsword was enshrouded in a thick transmigration strength. The Infernal Crimson Divine Sword was murderous. Good sword. Jian Wushuang's eyes lit up as he could resonate with the transmigration strength carried by the Infernal Crimson Divine Sword while stroking it. He was certain that his power would be boosted if he used the sword to perform the transmigration sword technique. This sword is good, but it's only a top-tier earthly treasure. Is there something at a higher level? Jian Wushuang asked. The divine weapons usually came in different grade sets. The Black Chief explained. We do have a heavenly treasure level Infernal Crimson Divine Sword. However, you must be able to control all 9 Infernal Crimson Divine Swords at once if you're using it for the Transmigration Sword formation. It takes a lot of divine power to control even one heavenly treasure level divine weapon. Won't it be too taxing on you if you try to control all 9 of them at once? He placed himself in Jian Wushuang's shoes when recommending top-tier earthly treasure level Infernal Crimson Divine Sword. I have my methods regarding the divine power controls. Show me the heavenly treasure level Infernal Crimson Divine Sword, said Jian Wushuang. The Black Chief did not say much as an Infernal Crimson Divine Sword that was the same as before appeared in front of Jian Wushuang the moment he waved his hand. Although there were no changes in appearances and transmigration strength permeated on the blade's surface, the heavenly treasure sword possessed a much stronger aura than its top-tier earthly treasure counterpart, giving off a much colder and fiercer aura. Jian Wushuang's eyes lit up at the sight of the Infernal Crimson Divine Sword. How many primordial stones does this Infernal Crimson Divine Sword cost? Jian Wushuang asked. Master, this Infernal Crimson Divine Sword is a graded divine weapon. Although it's only an ordinary heavenly treasure divine weapon, it's the most powerful among its heavenly treasure peers. Hence, it's a much steeper price at 2.5 million primordial stones. You'll only need to pay 22.5 million primordial stones if you buy all 9 swords together, said the Black Chief. It's really expensive, said Jian Wushuang. The pitch-black spear, which he previously auctioned at the Star-Picking Pavilion, was a top-tier, heavenly treasure offensive divine weapon, but it was only sold for 2,050,000 primordial stones, much lower than the Infernal Crimson Divine Sword. Although it's expensive, it's worth the price. Jian Wushuang smiled and immediately took out an interspatial ring. Here you go, 22,500,000 primordial stones. Have a look. Black Chief took the interspatial ring and nodded after briefly scanning its contents. Master, wait a minute. Not long after, the Black Chief appeared in front of Jian Wushuang again and gave all 9 heavenly treasure Infernal Crimson Divine Swords to Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang was quite happy. His combat prowess would be greatly improved with those 9 Infernal Crimson Divine Swords when performing the Transmigration Sword formation. The Transmigration Sword formation's current power was enough to wipe out a peak Earth ultimate god. Its power might even be able to compete against Heaven ultimate gods if he went all out to perform the Transmigration Sword formation. Jian Wushuang cried out again, "There's another matter. I have a lot of primordial stones, but they are of little use to me. Can I exchange these primordial stones with some divine elixir pills?" Divine elixir pills? The Black Chief was startled before bitterly smiled. Master, You must be joking. It's impossible to exchange primordial stones for divine elixir pills. Impossible. Jian Wushuang frowned. Yes, although the market value of a divine elixir pill is about 5 million primordial stones, it doesn't mean the two can be traded freely. Divine elixir pills are completely different from primordial stones, after all. The divine elixir pills are for high-level cultivation, so they are far better than primordial stones. Many various factions and powerful experts regard the divine elixir pills as far more important than primordial stones. The Black Chief continued, if you'd like to exchange a divine elixir pill for primordial stones, you may get 5 million primordial stones from the star-picking pavilion, and we might even agree to the exchange for 6 million primordial stones. However, we won't be able to do the reverse. The deal will happen even if you paid 6, 7, or even 10 million primordial stones. It's not just us. I believe that many factions won't be willing to do the same. However, you may be able to use other special treasures like the Soul Offensive Divine weapon, which you have previously auctioned in exchange for divine elixir pills. Chapter 2620, Golden Chief Yuan lay, Heavenly Treasure Soul Offensive Divine weapon? I was very lucky to get it. So how could I possibly get a second one? Jian Wushuang smiled. Well, let me find a way myself, if that's the case. Jian Wushuang stood up and walked out of Star-Picking Pavilion. Goodbye, Master. The Black Chief sent Jian Wushuang away. The Black Chief immediately went to a bald man after Jian Wushuang left the Star-Picking Pavilion. The bald man was the one who had some entanglements with Sen Shouwang, one of the 3 golden chiefs in Star-Picking Pavilion. Master, the Northern Dark Star Territorial Lord has left, reported the Black Chief in a servile tone. The bald man asked, what did he do? He bought 9 heavenly treasure Infernal Crimson Divine Swords for 22,500,000 primordial stones to perform the Transmigration Sword formation. In addition, he also wanted to exchange his primordial stones for divine elixir pills, but I refused, said the Black Chief. Humph. Why would an Earth Ultimate God need 9 heavenly treasure Infernal Crimson Divine swords to perform the Transmigration Sword formation? That's a bit too luxurious, isn't it? Well, he was lucky enough to get a heavenly treasure Soul Offensive Divine weapon and sold it for 100 million primordial stones at the auction after all. He had also sold a heavenly treasure defensive armor at the same time, and probably has a total of 120 million primordial stones. He still has a lot more to squander after deducting the 40 million he spent on the Transmigration Sword formation. The bald man stood up after pondering momentarily and said, I'll go out for a bit. Just find an excuse to dismiss them if other supervisors or the 2 other golden chiefs ask for me. The Black Chief was hesitant before he continued, Master, the Star-Picking Pavilion has a strict policy against targeting our customers. No? The bald man shouted. What do you think I have in mind? There's unresolved enmity between both of us. Don't I even have the right to resolve private grievances? The Black Chief frowned, but dared not continue. The bald man soon left Star-Picking Pavilion and went toward Jian Wushuang's direction. In the vast void, Jian Wushuang was seen in his golden robe and long sword on his back, sauntering around. He was muttering under his breath, Primordial stones are no longer useful to me now. I'll need to get my hands on some divine elixir pills if I'm planning to continue relying on refining divine power for my cultivation realm improvement. It's a pity the Star-Picking Pavilion won't exchange it for primordial stones. Jian Wushuang was quite helpless. Although he had bought a lot of treasures, he was still left with quite a lot of primordial stones on hand. However, those primordial stones were of not much help to him at that moment. The Black Chief mentioned to him, that he could use other special treasures to exchange for divine elixir pills with the star-picking pavilion, but he did not have any suitable treasures on him at the moment for such purpose. There were many treasures in his possession, with many of them being rather valuable. The stately painting went without saying. Blood mountain sword and golden glass armor were his life divine weapon and life armor. They were extremely powerful and invaluable. The Fomtian scroll from Crimson Stone Saint was of great help to Jian Wushuang's enlightenment and cultivation. Any one of those treasures could be used in exchange for a large number of divine elixir pills, but he would never do that. Therefore, he had to come up with an alternative solution to get some divine elixir pills. Just as Jian Wushuang thought about it, Jian Wushuang was taken aback. His soul power had been sweeping around, and that was how he discovered someone within his soul detection range. That person was emanating a particularly tyrannical aura. "Are you here for me?" Jian Wushuang squinted his eyes slightly, and the opponent sped up as expected. A stream of light appeared in front of him in just seconds. The bald man, who also wore a golden robe, slowly emerged as the stream of light dissipated. Golden robe. Jian Wushuang looked at the bald man's golden robe with his constricted eyes. This is the golden robe worn by a star-picking pavilion golden chief. He's a golden chief from the star-picking pavilion. Is he coming after me for that incident? Jian Wushuang had sort of understood the other party's intention at that moment. "You're the Northern Dark Star, Territorial Lord, Jian Wushuang. Am I right?" The bald man stared at Jian Wushuang with a weird smile on his face. "My name is Yuan. Have you heard of me?" Jian Wushuang instinctively shook his head. Although Jian Wushuang knew Yuan's identity and was quite sure of his intentions, he had never heard of the name Yuan. "Thanks. It seems that San Shouwang had not mentioned my name to you, but you should know me nonetheless," said the bald man. "Yuan, that's for sure." Jian Wushuang verified his conjecture when Yuan mentioned San Shouwang. San Shouwang once revealed that he had an older brother, a star-picking pavilion golden chief, who always kept an eye on him. That person must be Yuan. "Are you San Shouwang's older brother?" Jian Wushuang asked. "Older brother? Well, I guess so." Yuan nodded. "Although I don't want to admit it, we did swear to be brothers when San Shouwang and I were only divine demons a long time ago. Unfortunately, he's not very talented. I've already achieved so much and became the star-picking pavilion golden chief, while he remained as an insignificant territorial lord after so many years. Although he isn't qualified to be my brother, we were brothers nonetheless. What do you think I should do since he died in your hands?" Yuan stared at Jian Wushuang with a strange smile. Jian Wushuang looked gloomy and said in a low voice, "The battle for the territorial lord position was a matter of life and death. He's weak, and that's why I'm able to kill him. Yuan, you should know better being the star-picking pavilion's golden chief. Besides, I'm a customer of the star-picking pavilion and have just left the star-picking pavilion. I'm afraid it's inappropriate for you to do so, isn't it? I'm sure you would be in hot soup if your supervisor finds out, right?" Yuan sneered. "Hee, I'm here for our private grievance. What will the supervisor do even if he finds out?" "Jian, let's not talk nonsense. I'm not here to avenge San Shouwang, but he borrowed a large number of primordial stones from me to purchase the 4th volume of the Divine Destruction Beast Manual before he died. I can only ask you to pay me back on his behalf now that he's dead." Chapter 26-21. Battle against a Heaven Ultimate God. How many primordial stones did San Shouwang borrow from you? Jian Wushuang calmly asked. "Not much, only 30 million primordial stones, and the little love between him and me worth more or less 20 million primordial stones. So you only need to fork out 50 million primordial stones. I shall call it a truce with that, and you may continue being the Northern Darkstar territorial lord and do whatever you want, suggested Yuan Lei. 50 million primordial stones aren't too many, said Jian Wushuang indifferently. A weird smile appeared on Yuan Lei's face. He did have a little friendship with San Shouwang, but their relationship had faded long ago. San Shouwang did borrow some primordial stones from Yuan Lei to buy the 4th volume of the Divine Destruction Beast Manual, but it was only 6 million primordial stones, yet he had asked for 50 million, which was an exorbitant amount. He only did so because he was aware of Jian Wushuang's wealth. 50 million primordial stones was nothing to Jian Wushuang. Yuan Lei had decided that he would never trouble Jian Wushuang again if Jian Wushuang was willing to give him 50 million primordial stones. He was the Star-Picking Pavilion's Golden Chief, and he had to comply with the Star-Picking Pavilion's policies after all. He could still avoid doing anything that goes against their policies. I have 50 million primordial stones, but what are you going to do if I won't give it to you? Jian Wushuang casually asked. No, Jian Yi, I advise you to think carefully about it. You ought to know your life is worth more than the 50 million primordial stone, even if it's a lot. Yuan Lei smiled faintly as a huge wave of divine power was sent across, aiming at Jian Wushuang at the same time. So this is a heaven ultimate god's divine power. Jian Wushuang's eyes suddenly constricted. He knew the weakest of Star-Picking Pavilion's chiefs were at least a peak Earth ultimate god with most of their golden chief at the heaven ultimate god realm. He knew Yuan Lei was a genuine heaven ultimate god. However, Jian Wushuang did not have the slightest fear after knowing his opponent was a heaven ultimate god. His eyes were showing a strong intent to fight. On the contrary, after spending 10 years cultivating in seclusion, I've achieved merit in Sword World and made a breakthrough to peak ultimate god realm. My combat prowess is at the peak Earth ultimate god level, and I'm now able to fight against a weak heaven ultimate god if I opt to put my full abilities to use. Although I've made no major breakthroughs in understanding sword principle and laws, nor improvements in my cultivation realm, my strength has improved by several folds through regaining the stately painting. It's still unsure who's stronger if I try my best to fight against Yuan Lei. Jian Wushuang was looking forward to finding that out as he stared at Yuan Lei closely and licked his lips. Yuan Lei, right? I have 50 million primordial stones in my interspatial ring and also many other treasures. All of these will belong to you if you manage to kill me. This may be a huge sum of money, but can you take it from me? Jian Wushuang scoffed. Do you have a death wish? Yuan Lei's eyes went wide. If that's the case, I shall fulfill your wish. Yuan Lei instantly fired out after he said so. Boom. A majestic aura wave, led by a huge gush of divine power, came like a torrent. All the divine power instantly formed a green beast in front of Yuan Lei that was full of vitality. The green beast let out a roar before charging at Jian Wushuang. It continued to evolve and increased its size tenfold until it reached a few hundred feet high before it appeared in front of Jian Wushuang. The several hundred feet high green beast was like a huge mountain as it dashed toward Jian Wushuang with its mouth wide open as though it could swallow the entire world. The divine power pressed on Jian Wushuang without giving him any chance to escape. This is really powerful. You're indeed a heaven ultimate god. Jian Wushuang stood in the void and looked up to admire the green beast coming down at him. 5 years ago, he had seen the scary battle between heaven ultimate gods and grand ultimate gods during the fight of the Huangji Golden Pill. At that time, he was far away from the battlefield and had not personally participated in the battlefield, hence he did not manage to grasp a feel of Heaven Ultimate God's power. Even though he did break into the battlefield later, all he did was threaten the people on the battlefield with his life-rating pressure without any chance to fight against the Heaven Ultimate Gods. At this time, he was all alone and could finally feel the strength of a Heaven Ultimate God. The green beast was just a simple trick performed by Yuan at will, but its power was sufficiently strong to put any ordinary Earth Ultimate God in despair. An ordinary Earth Ultimate God. Even some of the weaker peak Ultimate Gods might not even have a survival chance under that green beast's mouth. However, Jian Wushuang was not included among those Earth Ultimate Gods. He kept a cold and desolate look on his face as the Seven Stars secret technique within his body began brewing, whereas the aura on his body had also instantly climbed from a high-level Earth Ultimate God to the peak Earth Ultimate God level. The Blood Mountain sword behind him was instantly unsheathed and moved along with his steps. A monstrous killing intent that had been infinitely magnified rose all of a sudden. Kill, kill, kill. Jian Wushuang's entire mind and body were replaced by the murderous intent. His eyes slowly closed before reopened again. A terrifying killing intent shot out the moment his eyes opened. Space-time sword technique, fifth style, killing heart. A scarlet sword light with murderous intent came down. The scarlet sword light carried a terrifying power which instantly cut the mountain-like green beast that was hundreds of feet tall into half. Yet the sword light remained unabated and continued cutting through the void above right into the sky. Infinite divine power breath was disseminated. Oh! Yuan gave Jian Wushuang a surprised look. No wonder he's so arrogant. He's quite powerful. Humph! Jian Wushuang snorted coldly as he shot out a few streams of light using his mind. Those light streams were coming from black swords that exuded a cold breath with a large amount of transmigration strength. Those were the Infernal Crimson Divine Sword. 9 Infernal Crimson Divine Swords, 9 Heavenly Treasure Divine Weapons, arranged in a line before Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang then pointed with a finger. Buzz, 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 buzz. The 9 Infernal Crimson Divine Swords began to evolve into 9 reincarnation passages in the blink of an eye. Those 9 reincarnation passages were huge, mysterious, and unpredictable. Chapter 26-22. The Battle, Go. The 9 reincarnation passages went crashing at Yuan like 9 gigantic asteroids under the guidance of Jian Wushuang. Each of those 9 asteroids contained immense and powerful energy. Yuan shivered, and a surging pure divine power that could only be possessed by a Heaven Ultimate God concentrating in the void before him broke out within the blink of an eye. A barefooted green titan that was more than 3 kilometers tall formed with thick muscular arms and thighs, and a single horn on its forehead. Its body surface was shrouded with terrifying divine power. The green titan swung its muscular arm as soon as it appeared and threw out a slap. Boom! The 9 asteroids were immediately deflected away. Jian Wushuang focused his eyes. 9 swords combine, Heaven's Edge. Ring! The 9 asteroids were immediately deflected backward and overlapped each other before suddenly forming a huge reincarnation passage. A black divine sword shrouded with infinite samsara strength instantly shot out violently from the end of the reincarnation passage. After that, the black divine sword was a perfect sword formation formed through the combination of 9 infernal crimson divine swords. The first stage of transmigration sword formation. Heaven's Edge, the first stage sword formation's power completely broke out following the full activation of Jian Wushuang's transmigration law. Virum, the black divine sword pierced through the void with terrifying power and charging boldly at the green titan like an awl. The green titan growled before tightly clenched its fist and punched violently with infinite force. Impact noises burst out violently as the two made contact, and a huge hole appeared on the green titan's fist. The black divine sword continued its crazed attack and pierced through its palm before going through its chest. The momentum was finally exhausted and dispersed with the reappear of 9 identical black divine swords flying sideways in the void. The green titan should have fallen apart at that moment when being penetrated. However, it was still shrouded with surging energy. Yuan was still standing there behind it with a slight smile. That's truly a sword formation created by Sword Lord Tong Xian. Such incredible power. You truly are gifted to be able to unleash the sword formation to such a level despite only learning it for a few years. Unfortunately, the distance between Earth Ultimate God and Heaven Ultimate God isn't something that could be filled in with a sword formation. The penetrated hole on the green titan not only recovered, but its energy suddenly surged even higher before vigorously projecting outwards after he said that. A green-colored lance then appeared in its right hand. Vitality Law. Jian Wushuang squinted while staring at the green titan. He could tell that Yuan had studied Vitality Law, as it possesses the characteristics of strong vitality, incredible resilience, and extremely firm defensive abilities. However, experts who studied Vitality Law did not possess very powerful offensive abilities. Although being offensive was not Yuan forte, he was a true Heaven Ultimate God after all. Jian Wushuang did not dare to be careless. An immense gold-colored divine power was forcefully gathered, accompanied with ringing noises at that instance, and formed a more than 9 kilometers tall golden god shadow behind him. The divine golden god shadow stood tall while overlooking everything around it. The green titan was only 3 kilometers tall, which was a dwarf compared to the golden god shadow in terms of size. Furthermore, Jian Wushuang's overall ability surged even higher with the help of the divine god of punishment. You do have some tricks. Shame that they're useless. Yuan smiled faintly while suddenly lashing out his hand. A wholesome principal world suppressed Jian Wushuang in an instant. The principal world was filled with powerful energy, with the area that had opened up having probably surpassed 5,000 kilometers. Most importantly, the principal world had reached profound realm since he was a Heaven Ultimate God. A wave of vital energy was sweeping out at its surroundings as his principal world pressed outward. Life started bursting out in the wasteland below within a split second as large amounts of trees, flora, and fauna burst out from the ground. A refreshing breeze blew by as the environment between heaven and earth turned into a completely lively new realm. The green titan's size immensely augmented as its power grew to a whole new level, and it began to charge at Jian Wushuang with the lance in its hand. However, Jian Wushuang sneered at the scene before him. Right then, boom, a heaven-shaking sword essence suddenly surged as the 50,000 kilometers sword world he developed was unleashed. Although it was only a merit sword world, it ruthlessly swept out as soon as it appeared, and the profound realm principal world retreated swiftly like an ebbing tide under the sword world's influence. What? Yuan was shocked. A merit sword world could actually suppress my profound principal world. How's that possible? Yuan was completely stunned, but did not know that the Heaven Ultimate God, Zhonghan, that Jian Wushuang had killed was equally as stunned as he was. Furthermore, that surprise was only the beginning as Jian Wushuang waved his arm right after that, and a beam of light blended into the surrounding void. Heaven and earth were shivering in that instance. A most beautiful scroll painting world appeared out of nowhere from the heaven above. The scroll painting world was incredibly real, with mountains, rivers, and even contained 9 gigantic continents. What's that? Yuan frowned. The Thousand Treasures Grand World, Transmigration World. Jian Wushuang's cold voice resonated. Vroom, the surroundings began to change. The original wasteland initially became full of life, with birds chirping and flowers blooming from Yuan Lei's unleashed vitality law power. However, that environment had turned into infinite darkness in the blink of an eye. Gigantic reincarnation passages began to appear one by one out of nowhere in the darkness. The reincarnation passages were spread out to different corners of the world as infinite samsara strength began to unscrupulously spread out. The transmigration world was filled with infinite samsara strength as Jian Wushuang stood in the center, although he was the ruler of the transmigration world. Yuan Lei, welcome to my world. Jian Wushuang smiled as his laughter resonated in every corner of the transmigration world. Ring, 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 ring. The 9 separated infernal crimson divine sword appeared before Jian Wushuang once again, trembling and shrouded with samsara strength, way stronger than before. Chapter 26-23. World Transformation Transmigration. World was mainly powered by transmigration law, which was filled with inexhaustible transmigration powers within. Samsara strength activation, or usage of transmigration-related secret techniques, in that world would have their strength greatly empowered. However, tactics from other laws would be weakened considerably in that world. The effect of Jian Wushuang's transmigration sword formation could be maximized there. On the other hand, Yuan Lei had his vitality law limited in every way. Yuan Lei, welcome to my world. Jian Wushuang's laughter pounded on Yuan Lei's eardrums as he felt a touch of annoyance. World transformation. This kid could actually do that in an instant. How mind-blowing is that formation? Yuan Lei was feeling a little shocked, but quickly firmed up his stare. No, he's a mere Earth ultimate god, regardless of how skilled this kid is. Grand techniques such as world transformation are perhaps unachievable even by undying saints, let alone him. He must be relying on some treasure. Yes, it has to be a treasure. A treasure that enables world transformation. The treasure would be mine if I killed him. Killing intent rose in Yuan Lei's mind. He originally did not have such strong killing intent toward Jian Wushuang, as he only wanted Jian Wushuang to pay him 50 million primordial stones, and he would immediately leave. However, forget about 50 million at that moment. He would definitely not allow Jian Wushuang to walk away alive, even if he agreed to pay him 100 million primordial stones. Boom! The 3 kilometers tall green titan's hostility shot up into the heavens. It already appeared before Jian Wushuang and attacked furiously with the lance in its hands. Humph! Jian Wushuang let out a cold humph as the 9 infernal crimson divine swords floating before him once again overlapped each other and again formed the first stage of transmigration sword formation. Heaven's Edge. The sword formation's energy level increased drastically and shot out with a boom under the empowerment from the surrounding infinite samsara strength. Bang! 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 One violent bang after another resonated as the transmigration sword formation repeatedly clashed head-on with the green titan's lance. Although the black divine sword was fended off every time, and even flying off, the green titan did not have it easy either, with its advancement completely blocked. Moreover, the black divine sword was incredibly agile. It could completely turn into an overpowering sword formation, but it could also disassemble into 9 different swords while still being able to unleash incomparable energy. For instance, the sword formation found a chance to disassemble at that moment. 6 infernal crimson divine swords continued clashing with the green titan, while the other 3 were attacking Yuan Lei like lightning under the empowerment of the surrounding samsara strength. The grim-looking Yuan Lei spontaneously executed a palm strike, which deflected those 3 infernal crimson divine swords and caused them to fly backward. In a not-so-distant void, Jian Wushuang's eyes were burning with a heaven-shaking battle intent in the center of the transmigration world at that moment. Heaven ultimate God. I'd love to see if I have the abilities to slay a heaven ultimate God. Jian Wushuang moved with a bloodthirsty smile. The heaven and earth around transformed once again as he moved. Although the surrounding was still pitch black, the various reincarnation passages had already vanished out of sight. A large number of space-time cracks and immense space-time storms took over its place. The samsara strength that initially filled the area between heaven and earth had changed into surging space-time energy. The Thousand Treasures grand world had shifted from transmigration world into space-time world in the blink of an eye. That world was dominated by space-time. Heaven and earth have changed again. Yuan Lei's face was grim as Jian Wushuang concurrently appeared before him under his scrutiny. Ring. A total of 300 apparitions burst out at the same time and filled the space. They were faster and more agile under the effect of space-time energy. Even Yuan Lei could not tell which among the apparitions was Jian Wushuang's true self in such a short time. Whoosh! A cold sword light suddenly appeared and cunningly directed itself at Yuan Lei's heart from behind. That's really fast. Yuan Lei was shocked. In truth, Jian Wushuang could not perform at such incredible speed with his current understanding of space-time law. The speed was mainly due to him situated at the space-time world within the Thousand Treasures grand world. His performance using space-time law was greatly amplified there. Boom! A low-impact noise resonated which shuddered Yuan Lei, who swiftly and subconsciously moved sideways. However, Jian Wushuang instantly dashed forward and completely unleashed his sword technique with a terrifying speed. Whoosh! 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 Shades of sword shadows lashed out from Jian Wushuang's hand. The sword shadows looked very spontaneous, hence its momentum was not considered strong. However, they were moving too fast. Too fast. They were just too fast. Jian Wushuang already possesses very fast speeds. The space-time world's assistance only immensely further increased his attack speed, which resulted in his sword lights moving incredibly fast despite being a spontaneous attack. The inexhaustible sword shadows were like an infinite ocean of swords that shrouded Yuan Lei within and forced him to defend himself the best he could. Despite being able to defend himself, he began to lose gradually from exhaustion. Kid, don't be too cocky now. Yuan Lei was incredibly mad and finally unleashed his heaven ultimate god abilities. Layers and layers of vital strength shrouded his body as his divine body also began to surge violently before growing to 5 meters tall with a great deal of energy increase. Energy began to gather in his right hand as he unleashed a palm strike. Boom, boom. Heaven and earth shivered as a gigantic hand suddenly appeared. That gigantic hand emitted such energy levels that it would make any regular earth ultimate god lose all hopes to live. Even Jian Wushuang could not help but squint. It was not long from when he first managed to control the Thousand Treasures grand world. Hence the space-time world he manifested from within was not too sturdy. The surrounding space-time world began to tremble upon the appearance of the gigantic hand. The gigantic hand's complete energy outburst shattered the space-time world and caused Jian Wushuang to retreat at that instant. Heaven ultimate gods are truly marvelous. However, Jian Wushuang sneered as the shattered space-time world began to rebuild itself at an incredible speed. The world began to shift once again. The shrouding darkness and space-time storms had faded away, revealing Jian Wushuang and Yuan Lei on a bare wasteland with many swords plunged to the ground. There were long swords, soft swords, heavy swords, and various other sword types. However, each of the swords undoubtedly had a terrifying aura. 10 of thousands of swords were plunged standing from the ground on that wide wasteland. It was a huge-scale sword grave. 1,000 treasures, grand world, sword principal world. Chapter 26-24. The strongest battle power. It was the transmigration world first, then space-time world, and now it has shifted into the sword principal world. Yuan Lei did not like that a single bit. Beams of vigorous sword essence filled every corner of that world upon the sword principal world's formation. Jian Wushuang had been using his 50,000 kilometers perfect sword world to violently suppress and stun Yuan Lei, which caused his principal world to barely hang in there. Jian Wushuang's sword world energy suddenly surged ferociously once again upon the shift into sword principal world and crushed Yuan Lei's principal world in just a short moment. An incredibly powerful stunning strength took effect on Yuan Lei's body. Damn! Yuan Lei could not help but curse. Jian Wushuang attacked once again at that moment. The Blood Mountain sword lashed out silently. The heaven, earth, and space-time seemed as though they were overlapping. A mysterious sword shadow flashed by and disappeared under such overlappings. Space-time sword techniques, 6th form. Overlapping shadow. With the support of the surrounding sword principal world, Jian Wushuang's strike was especially terrifying. Yuan Lei was completely under the sword world's stunning effects as his face turned red from seeing the sword being pointed at him, and the 3 kilometers tall green titan immediately stood before him. Slash! The cold, sharp sword blade sliced through the green titan and cut it into 2 halves before the sword shadow's impressive momentum continued to sweep toward Yuan Lei's divine body. Although Yuan Lei's divine body was equipped with protective techniques, his body was still shaken violently under the sword shadow attacks and threw up a big gulp of blood in the next moment. He was injured. A respectable heaven ultimate god expert like Yuan Lei was severely injured. Boy, you've totally pissed me off. I want to strip off your skin and take your bones apart to vent my hatred today. Yuan Lei's eyes turned red as he released a deep growl filled with infinite killing intent like a demon from hell. Jian Wushuang sneered upon seeing that. What coincidence! I'm also losing interest in playing games with you. Let's have a duel of fates. Jian Wushuang's body surface burst with golden light as soon as he finished his words. The golden light which came from his golden robe was the golden glass armor. A layer of golden armor appeared on the surface of his body in only a swift moment. One of the top 5 7 stars Black Sect's secret technique, 9 Sparkle Star armor, was unleashed. His current achievement of the 9 Sparkle Star armor from the Golden Armor chapter was enough to increase Jian Wushuang's overall ability 3-fold. Freeze! Jian Wushuang quietly commanded, and the 9 infernal crimson divine swords once again overlapped each other in the void next to him before forming the first stage of transmigration sword formation. At the same time, a wave of golden divine power swept out from Jian Wushuang's body and formed a grand golden divine power ocean that swept across every direction in a frenzy, covering the surrounding heaven and earth. A gigantic golden prison appeared in the sword principal world in the blink of an eye. The golden prison's appearance perfectly overlapped with the sword principal world as its realm suppression effects began to sweep outward. The 9 kilometers tall golden god shadow behind Jian Wushuang also had its aura rise to its peak. Its eyes were shining with a thick essence of light while standing still. 7 stars secret technique, divine god of punishment, and 9 sparkle star armor. I've unleashed all 3 of 7 stars sect's strongest secret techniques. I've also used the stately paintings 1,000 treasures, grand world, and prison of punishment. Presently, I've shown all my cards except for the life rating suppression. This is the highest state I can reach for the moment, and also my most powerful form. I feel that the current me is even qualified to destroy a regular heaven ultimate god. Jian Wushuang clenched his fists as his burning battle intent surged. Humph! Yuan lay humped coldly as his body that had already grown to 5 meters tall grew dramatically again and became 10 meters tall. At the same time, various secret markings which looked like tree branches surfaced on his body and gradually crawled all over his body, making him look ever so ferocious and terrifying. A gigantic tree grew upward behind him. That gigantic tree was also 3 kilometers tall, incomparably sturdy and full of life. A layer of green armor also appeared on the green titan's body in front of Yuan, lay along with its sudden, violently surging energy. Charge! Yuan Lei shouted a command, and the green titan charged at Jian Wushuang fiercely with a jump that covered a long distance in a short moment. Go! The black divine sword manifested from transmigration. Sword formation vibrated upon being pointed by Jian Wushuang. Its energy suddenly increased threefold before charging outward in the blink of an eye under the 9 sparkle star armor's influence. Jian Wushuang's deadly eyes stared ahead at Yuan Lei, who was at a far distance. The 9 kilometers tall golden god shadow suddenly burst with glorious golden light behind him. The gigantic golden god shadow's arms swung outwards upon Jian Wushuang's mental manipulation. The 2 golden palms suddenly expanded infinitely to the extent of covering the sky and the sun, such that half of heaven and earth could be covered with only one hand. The entire surrounding void was then covered by both hands. Both palms began to fold together toward Yuan Lei. Punishment, divine destruction. Jian Wushuang commanded vigorously. The terrifying divine power burst out of the golden god shadow's giant palms. Yuan Lei was completely imprisoned within the void as the 2 palms slowly folded together. Divine destruction, like prison of punishment, was one of the techniques built within the divine god of punishment secret technique. In his past life, Jian Wushuang had seen Emperor by using that move before. In his current life, he could finally use it after making a breakthrough to peak ultimate god along with a few years of studying. Even though they were the same moves, it was a few times more powerful than Emperor Bei's when Jian Wushuang performed it. Yuan Lei began to panic upon seeing both golden palms closing in on him from both sides. He could feel the extremely destructive energy contained in the 2 palms and dared not be careless. Broom, boom, boom. Infinite green divine power suddenly burst out from his body and caused the gigantic tree behind him to begin spreading out. The countless branches started to take shape and extend before finally clashing head-on with the 2 golden palms. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The divine power clashing noises resonated the heaven and earth. However, the head-on clash only lasted for a short moment before the 2 gigantic golden palms began folding together again. What? Yuan Lei was completely shocked and had not expected that he still could not fend off that particular attack after unleashing his most powerful ability. The 2 golden palms were still closing in and continued to suppress him, while the branches which burst out from his body were also gradually losing the fight. Chapter 26-25, Bombardment. Boom. The pair of golden giant palms finally folded together completely. Yuan Lei was naturally bearing unprecedented pressure situated in that void in which the horrifying energy was violently crushing. The golden divine power gradually subsided after a while, and the void returned to its original calmness bit by bit. Yuan Lei was still standing in that void after matters died down, but his body was covered with blood. Cracks began to appear on the 3 kilometers tall tree behind him along with his greatly decreased aura. However, an expert who practiced vitality law had the incredible rejuvenating ability. His capability would return in an extremely short time, so long the giant tree behind him still stands. still kicking. Jian Wushuang's frosty eyes stared at Yuan Lei. Yuan Lei raised his head and looked at him with a strange smile on his lips. Jian Yi, I truly have underestimated you. You're merely an Earth ultimate god, who not only possesses great battle strength, but also endless techniques. I've lost this battle, but don't you get cocky now. If my guess is right, the reason you could perform so many techniques is because of the treasures on you, especially the one that could perform world transformation. Hee, a treasure of such caliber isn't something an Earth ultimate god like you could possess. You'd probably have a lot of visitors at your doorstep very soon if I spread the word about you possessing such treasures. Do you really think you have the chance to do that? Jian Wushuang's voice was as cold as his gaze. Yuan Lei's expression changed, and quickly raised his head in the next moment as he noticed something. His eyes were opened wide upon raising his head. Extremely powerful energy that previously existed in the world inside the floating scroll painting began to descend from above him. A gigantic palm print began to descend from within the painting's world. That palm print was the Divine Emperor's seal, a technique Jian Wushuang acquired after fusing the first 3 forms of the 9 provinces seal. It was also Jian Wushuang's most powerful offensive move. That's Yuan Lei's eyes were opened so round and wide in disbelief. He was situated right under the gigantic palm print, and could clearly feel that the palm print's energy could even destroy heaven and earth. That energy was a lot stronger than the pair of gigantic golden folding palms unleashed by Jian Wushuang, which had severely injured him. It was so much stronger. He had enough confidence to protect himself from the pair of golden folding palms. However, the descending giant palm print simply made him feel a touch of helplessness. You actually have a technique that's stronger than the one before. Yuan Lei gave a deadly stare at Jian Wushuang, as though looking at a monster. He truly was a monster. An Earth ultimate god who could perform those techniques time and again was enough to shock him to the core. He thought Jian Wushuang's previous move that severely injured him was already his strongest move. Jian Wushuang unexpectedly had something even more to offer. It was simply unbelievable. The gradually descending giant palm print caused Yuan Lei to even feel that all hope was lost. He tried his best to project his divine power. So was the giant tree behind him, working hard to block the gigantic palm print. However, the end was destruction. The gigantic palm print destroyed everything in its way and covered Yuan Lei's divine body in the blink of an eye. No. Yuan Lei gave out one final hysterical cry before being completely covered by the palm print. Boom, boom, boom. Infinite divine power rolled violently and shook heaven and earth. After a long while, the surroundings finally calmed and quieted down along with the gradually dispersing gigantic palm print and overwhelming divine power. Jian Wushuang slowly waved his hand as the golden prison and golden god shadow behind him disappeared. The sword principal world around him changed as well and reverted the area back to its original wasteland. On the other hand, the scroll painting world had just rewrapped itself back and turned into a beam of light before returning to Jian Wushuang's body. Jian Wushuang then kept the 9 infernal crimson divine swords inside his interspatial ring. Everything finally died down. Jian Wushuang exhaled quietly and walked forward to the void that was crushed by the Divine Emperor's seal. There was nothing left in the void, not even a corpse. Yuan Lei's body was completely grounded into microparticles by the Divine Emperor's seal. The only items left were Yuan Lei's interspatial ring and treasure that he had with him, which Jian Wushuang tried his best to keep intact. A true heaven ultimate god, one that deeply understands vitality law and fully equipped with extremely potent rejuvenating skill, has been killed by me. A strange light shone through Jian Wushuang's eyes as he felt a touch of excitement. Heaven Ultimate Gods was someone way above Earth Ultimate Gods. A regular Earth Ultimate God, even a peak Earth Ultimate God, almost had no capabilities to fight back against a Heaven Ultimate God. Even though his cultivation level was only at peak Ultimate God, which was not even an Earth Ultimate God yet, he managed to slay a Heaven Ultimate God in the end. Furthermore, it was a respectable duel with a head-on bombardment. It was truly a bombardment. He was purely relying on many hidden maneuvers, the stately painting, and a few secret techniques. He had to suppress Yuan Lei before finally using Divine God of Punishment's Divine Destruction and the 9 Provinces Seal's Divine Emperor Seal to bombard him till death. It would be enough to scare many to death if word of the battle had gotten out. The matter remains that he had truly achieved it. Jian Wushuang took a deep breath as the excitement gradually calmed down and his face turned serious again. Although I've killed Yuan Lei head-on, the reason I could kill him is because of my treasures, secret maneuvers, and hidden techniques. My true capabilities are still a far cry from Yuan Lei's without them. Jian Wushuang told himself while reflecting and summarizing the battle. Although Yuan Lei was a Heaven Ultimate God, he's average at best, and isn't considered among the stronger ones, if I'm not mistaken. He only had rather strong physical defenses, though his techniques were very normal, especially when it comes to offensive maneuvers. If I didn't run into him, but a Heaven Ultimate God who's very good at offensive, I'm afraid I won't be in such an advantageous position. At the end of the day, it's really because of my very low cultivation level. My understanding of various laws and sword principles aren't too far from most Heaven Ultimate Gods, but my too low level caused my base divine power being too far behind. I rely purely on secret techniques to fill in the lack of divine power. Chapter 26:26. Keeping low-key Jian Wushuang could not do anything about his cultivation level. His cultivation time was really too short and spanning only a few decades after all. It was already an incredible phenomenon for many to be able to reach the level of peak Ultimate God in such a short time. I need enough divine elixir pill to increase my cultivation level. Yuan Lei was a golden chief from the star-picking pavilion and should have quite valuable items in his interspatial ring. I wonder if there are divine elixir pills among them. Jian Wushuang immediately investigated the interspatial ring that Yuan Lei left behind with a glimmer of hope. Yuan Lei himself was an authentic Heaven Ultimate God and also a golden chief in Star-Picking Pavilion. His assets indeed did not disappoint Jian Wushuang and were faithful to his identity. Merely looking at primordial stones were already 30 million pieces of them. In addition, according to Jian Wushuang's estimation, the various types of cultivation resources had even exceeded the value of those primordial stones. Other than that, Yuan Lei possessed quite a fair bit of treasures as well. There were a dozen heavenly treasures that could help offensive skills cultivation. He even had 2 sets of defensive armor, despite being only at the ordinary level heavenly treasures. Unfortunately, there were no unique items like mystical weapons. Not only did Yuan Lei have the divine elixir pill that Jian Wushuang was looking for in his interspatial ring, but there were 3 of them. Adding on the one that I have, and those 3 divine elixir pills, I have 4 pills in total. ITLL helped me make quite a bit of progress if I cultivated using all of them, but it'll still be quite a distance away from becoming an Earth Ultimate God, thought Jian Wushuang. He had previously estimated that he would need around 20 divine elixir pills for him to make a breakthrough to primary level Earth Ultimate God from peak Ultimate God. 4 pills were only 1/5 of that number. And what's this? Jian Wushuang was curious when he found a green-colored jade bottle. The reason that bottle caught his attention was because of the vital energy being emitted from it. He was even more surprised upon realizing he had never seen the material type used to make that jade bottle. There's such strong vital energy coming out from that jade bottle's content. Jian Wushuang immediately removed the cork and extended his soul power into it, and immediately saw the drop of liquid within. The green liquid looked like dews on a flower or grass that could be found during the early mornings, but with a darker color shade. Moreover, Jian Wushuang felt a shock on his body and mind as soon as he saw the green liquid, which caused a grand sight to rise around him. That one drop of liquid contained such immense vital energy that even shocked him greatly. Although I don't know what this is, the content in this unique bottle carries such strong vital energy only means that it's no ordinary item. Should I find a chance in the future and get someone to appraise it, said Jian Wushuang. No one else in Danyang Holy Domain was more qualified to appraise treasures than Star Picking Pavilion, not even in the surrounding 9 realms of Golden Crow. Every chief in Star Picking Pavilion had an extremely vast knowledge about treasures, as they even specially trained several appraisers. Many extremely rare treasures, including those that had completely disappeared from the 9 realms of Golden Crow, could be identified by the Star-Picking Pavilion. For example, the green liquid could easily be taken to Star-Picking Pavilion for an appraisal, so long he was willing to spend some money. He would be able to know about the history and function of that green liquid. However, Jian Wushuang had just killed a golden chief from Star Picking Pavilion and acquired the green liquid from him. He did not dare go to Star Picking Pavilion under such circumstances. I'll head home first. I came out just for the auction, but ended up studying the stately painting and transmigration sword formation after the auction. It's been 5 years since I've left. I wonder how Northern Darkstar territory is doing under Sheener and Commander Xangheng's management. Jian Wushuang smiled, and very soon left the place for Northern Darkstar territory. A few men appeared on that very piece of land, which had already turned into ruins only a day after Jian Wushuang left. The purple-robed man leading the group said with a cold voice, "Someone sensed a humongous fluctuation of divine power in this area. It seems like a big fight really took place here, with both sides seems to have incredible capabilities based on the marks left on the battlefield, most probably an epic battle at the Heaven Ultimate God scale. On top of that, even though it's been a moment, the battlefield is still filled with a thick vital energy. It's probably left behind by Yuan Lei, who studies the vitality law." The purple-robed man was the Star-Picking Pavilion's supervisor. As for the 3 men following him, 2 of them were Golden Chief, while the other one was the Black Chief, who received Jian Wushuang. "Are you sure Yuan Lei was going after the Northern Darkstar Territorial Lord, and not someone else?" The purple supervisor looked at the Black Chief. "Positive." The Black Chief nodded solemnly. Master Yuan Lei had already spotted the Northern Darkstar Territorial Lord early on in the auction, but for some reason did not take action. The Territorial Lord came once again at that time to purchase 9 Infernal Crimson Divine swords before leaving. We completely lost contact with Master Yuan Lei soon after with him, not even replying to our messages. The purple-robed supervisor squinted, as he knew the reason why Yuan Lei did not take action. It was because Yuan Lei and the 2 Golden Chiefs were receiving orders from Senior Meng, and he naturally could not walk away. Yuan Lei's probably dead, since he fought against someone here, and we no longer heard from him thereafter. The Northern Darkstar Territorial Lord is only a high-level Earth Ultimate God. Even though he obtained Sword Lord Tongxin's Transmigration Sword formation, it'll be impossible for him to kill Yuan Lei. There has to be someone else who killed him, said the purple-robed supervisor. However, all the experts had left since the auction was over according to our intelligence. There are currently only a limited number of Heaven Ultimate Gods in Narcissus territory other than us, And these heaven ultimate gods having no reason nor the opportunity to kill Yuan Lei, said one of the golden chiefs. Let's just stop here and don't investigate further regardless of who did it, said the purple supervisor immediately. Don't investigate further? The two golden chiefs were slightly surprised. A star-picking pavilion golden chief dying was a big deal, and yet the supervisor had no intentions to investigate further. This Yuan Lei was looking for trouble anyway. He immediately followed the Northern Dark Star Territorial Lord as soon as he stepped out of Star-Picking Pavilion. Although they may have a minor private grudge, he still defied our rules, and we have nothing much to say now with him being killed. Furthermore, ITLL defile our reputation if word about this matter goes around, so we'd better keep this matter low-key. Chapter 26-27. Blood Gem. We can covertly investigate Yuan Lei's death, but do keep it that way. Other than that, we can also keep an eye on the Northern Dark Star Territorial Lord. Although he doesn't have the capabilities to kill Yuan Lei, he probably has something to do with his death after all, said the purple supervisor. The two golden chiefs behind immediately nodded. They left very soon. Northern Dark Star Territory. Jian Wushuang exited through a wormhole with a flash. I've returned. He exhaled and began gliding towards his territorial lord residence. Jian Wushuang passed by the official army barracks along the way. He suddenly paused as he glided above the barracks. How come there are only so few of them? Jian Wushuang frowned while overlooking the barracks below. There were 10 battalions in the official army, with each battalion consisting of 1,000 strong. There should have been a total of 10,000 men. However, as Jian Wushuang's soul power expanded, he could sense there were only 1,000 men in the barracks, which constituted only one battalion. This was the official army barracks, which would normally still have a large number of soldiers holding their positions in case something happens even when they received a big mission. Furthermore, there should have been 3 or 4 battalions permanently in the barracks, but there was only a single battalion at that moment. Did something happen? Jian Wushuang wondered before increasing his speed toward the territorial lord residence. Jian Wushuang had already descended in a manner and noticed that the residence did not change much. Jian Wushuang called out, "Shiner! Master, you're back!" Xiao Qiexin saw Jian Wushuang and smiled in surprise. "I just returned, and I realized there was only one battalion left when I passed by the official army barracks. What's going on? Did something happen?" Jian Wushuang asked. Xiao Qiexin nodded and said, "Something indeed happened. A blood gem mineral vein was discovered in the Starfire Wilderness within our territory a year ago. Commander Tsang Hung immediately brought 2 battalions over when he received the news. But who knew they'd find that someone has already taken over the mineral vein upon their arrival?" Taken over? Jian Wushuang was shocked. The official army had the strength to take over everything in Northern Darkstar territory. Who had the nerves to rob them of the mineral vein? It's our territory's direct neighbor, Green Flame Star territory. Moreover, Starfire Wilderness is coincidentally located at the border between Northern Darkstar territory and Green Flame Star territory. Their territorial lord received the news faster than us and sent their official army ahead of us the very moment news about the blood gem mineral vein began spreading. The mineral vein had already been taken over by the Green Flame Star territory's official army by the time Commander Tsang Hung arrived with his men. Commander Tsang Hung naturally was not ready to give up, so he argued with them, and a fight consequently broke out. The 2 official armies were similar in battle strength, but the Green Flame territorial lord later took matters into his own hands. He's the strongest territorial lord among those other territories around us, a peak Earth ultimate god. Commander Tsang Hung, of course, fell into an absolute disadvantage with him joining the battle. Commander Tsang Hung later mobilized 9 battalions over out of necessity and we can finally fight against the Green Flame territory as equals by relying on the numbers advantage. It seems that the Blood Gem mineral vein is currently being split 50-50 between Northern Darkstar territory and Green Flame Star territory, with each mining their gems, said Xiao Tiexin. Is that so? Jian Wushuang looked grim. He had heard of Blood Gem being a very high-leveled instrument cultivation material. The blood gems were usually mined to cultivate heavenly treasures, with only a very limited amount used for peak earthly treasures cultivation. In normal circumstances, only 10,000 pounds of blood gems was needed to cultivate a heavenly treasure. A complete blood gem mineral vein perhaps contained more than 10,000 pounds of blood gems. Its value was naturally quite astonishing. Jian Wushuang sneered. The mineral vein is found within our territory, yet the Green Flame territorial lord has the nerves to lead his official army to our land and steal it. Hee. How dare he look down upon the Northern Darkstar territorial lord? However, he knew that the Green Flame territorial lord was a peak earth ultimate god, and himself. Everyone knew about Jian Wushuang's battle strength being, at most, only in the high-level Earth Ultimate God realm from killing Sen Shou Wang before leaving Northern Darkstar territory. It was only normal that the Green Flame Star territorial lord did not take him seriously. Shiner, you stay here while I make a trip to Starfire Wilderness, said Jian Wushuang. Master, be careful. The Green Flame Star territorial lord is a peak Earth ultimate god after all, reminded Xiao Tiexin. Haha, I understand. Jian Wushuang smiled, but had to disagree deep inside. Why worry about a peak Earth ultimate god when he could even head-on kill a heaven ultimate god? Starfire Wilderness was just a regular wilderness located at the edge of Northern Darkstar territory. However, it was at that exact location an incredibly valuable blood gem mineral vein was discovered in the huge mountains, one that made the Green Flame Star territorial lord crossed boundaries to fight for. The mountains were humongous, and the entire mineral vein was similarly also incredibly huge. The mineral vein began on both ends of the mountains, which a camp had been respectively built. Several commanders from the official army were gathered together in one of the camps. Song Hung sat there and exclaimed, "It's too huge. This blood gem mineral vein is truly too huge. The mineral vein that we managed to control is only 40% of the entire thing. According to early estimation, the blood gems extended underground that has been discovered is already more than 1 billion pounds, and could even be a lot more. Blood gems are used for cultivating heavenly treasures. In the market, their value is also truly shocking. A pound of blood gems will cost 10 primordial stones, while 1 billion pounds of the blood gem will exceed 10 billion primordial stones." Wow! The commanders around him were in disbelief. 1 million primordial stones were already considered an astronomical amount to those commanders who were only at peak ultimate god. What about 10 billion? They could not even begin to fathom the concept of it. Our strength is unfortunately limited, and 40% is the most we're able to keep in control. The remaining 60% falls under the Green Flame Star Territory Official Army's control. Furthermore, the Green Flame Star Territorial Lord has already known the value of the mineral vein and will definitely mobilize even more personnel over from the Green Flame Star Territory. "I'm afraid that we can't even hold on to this 40% by then," said Song Hung coldly. Chapter 26-28, Territorial Lord returns Song Hung, and the others were only able to occupy 40% of the blood gem mineral vein due to their larger military size advantage. Song Hung had mobilized 9 out of 10 Northern Darkstar Territory official army battalions and formed a military formation with considerably strong combat power. On the other hand, the Green Flame Star Territory was fighting outside of his territory and was only able to mobilize 5 battalions for the battle. However, the peak earthly ultimate god Green Flame, territorial lord, managed to help his team gain an absolute advantage with his exceptional strength. However, Song Hung and the others would be at a greater disadvantage if the Green Flame territorial lord was able to bring in one or two more army battalions from the Green Flame Star territory, as that would make it rather impossible for them to continue occupying 40% of the mineral vein. It's simply too much for the Green Flame territorial lord to not only rely on his exceptional personal strength, but also bring his army into our territory to rob the mineral vein. It's unfortunate that our territorial lord isn't here. Otherwise, the Green Flame territorial lord won't dare to be so presumptuous. Not necessarily. Although our territorial lord is powerful, his combat prowess is only at the level of a high-level Earth ultimate god. There's still quite a big gap between him and the Green Flame territorial lord. I'm afraid our territorial lord might have to bow down to the Green Flame territorial lord if the two of them meet and fight. The commanders were in a discussion and soon fell silent at the end of their discussion. Even if the military strength of the two territories were equivalent, their territorial lords indeed had different strengths. The world was a place where spoils belonged to the victors. Suddenly, "What are you guys discussing?" An indifferent voice sounded. Song Hung and the other commanders were startled. They immediately turned around to look at the source of the sound. They had not noticed a young man wearing golden robes and carrying a longsword had appeared. Territorial Lord. Song Hung was the first to react and immediately saluted respectfully. "A pleasure to meet the territorial lord." The other commanders saluted and felt a little apprehensive. The feeling was heightened as cold sweat beaded on them when they were reminded that they were speaking ill of their territorial lord just moments ago. They were worried if Jian Wushuang heard what they just said. Jian Wushuang did hear their discussion, but he could care less. "Commander Song Hung, tell me what's going on with the blood gem mineral vein at this moment." Jian Wushuang sat down next to the table. Song Hung immediately explained the situation in great detail. 1 billion caddies. Even Jian Wushuang was shocked to hear the figures. This is just the amount of blood gems from the mineral vein we have discovered for the time being. There are still many that haven't been discovered. We currently only occupy 40% of the blood gems, whereas 60% is with the Green Flame territorial lord. If the number of blood gems in the entire mineral vein added up to billions, then its value will be a few tens of billion primordial stones, said Song Hung. It's a huge blood gem mineral vein. Jian Wushuang secretly smacked his tongue, but kept a calm front. This mineral vein is way too valuable. Although it appears within our star territory, we can't take control of the entire mineral vein with our capabilities alone. I believe that people from Crimson Stone Fort will come forward sooner or later. Jian Wushuang knew very well that the lucrative mineral vein, worth tens of billion primordial stones, would be very appealing to top factions in Danyang Holy Domain. On the other hand, the Crimson Stone Fort was the official ruler of Danyang Holy Domain, with every stellar region and territorial lord being appointed and administered by them. The Crimson Stone Fort would send an expert to retrieve the high-valued mineral vein in northern Darkstar territory. Song Hung nodded in agreement. The largest winner from the mineral vein's appearance will be the Crimson Stone Fort, but they'll need miners to get the blood gems. Therefore, they'll naturally source manpower from northern Darkstar territory and entrust our official army to be responsible for monitoring the mining process until its completion. I suppose the territorial lord and official army will be able to gain a lot of benefits during that time, as Crimson Stone Fort will usually leave us some gravy when they take the meat. The current problem with the Green Flame Star territory is their actions of taking away even our last bit of gravy. Jian Wushuang cracked a faint smile as Song Hung's metaphor was very appropriate. They could only pick up the leftovers after Crimson Stone Fort had collected their share of the benefit. How could they be able to accept the Green Flame Star territory rushing in and taking a cut of their portion? "Let's go and meet the Green Flame Territorial Lord," said Jian Wushuang with a smile. Song Hung did not act immediately from puzzlement. "Master, the Green Flame Territorial Lord is a peak Earth ultimate god. I hear he's very powerful." "I know." Jian Wushuang smiled slightly. "Take me to him." Song Hung stopped hesitating after noticing Jian Wushuang's confidence and immediately set off to lead the way. Jian Wushuang soon arrived at the void above the camp on the mine's other end. There were many soldiers from the Green Flame Star Territory's official army in the camp. "Master, the Green Flame Territorial Lord is in this camp," said Song Hung. Jian Wushuang nodded, as he had sensed an extremely tyrannical aura from the camp. "Green Flame Territorial Lord," Jian Wushuang called out, as his magnificent voice resounded vigorously throughout heaven and earth before naturally spreading toward the huge camp ahead. The camp immediately went into a commotion, and a few figures soon rose into the void, with a ragged silver-haired old man in a loose robe leading. The silver-haired old man was none other than the Green Flame Territorial Lord. The Green Flame Territorial Lord noticed Jian Wushuang as soon as he appeared in the void, carrying a long sword while wearing golden robes. "You must be the Northern Darkstar Territorial Lord, Jian Yi." The Green Flame Territorial Lord folded his hands and looked at Jian Wushuang with a somewhat condescending attitude. "I'm indeed Jian Yi. I've also heard about you, Green Flame Territorial Lord, and always wanted to visit you, but something unfortunate came up. My apologies that you had to make the trip instead." Jian Wushuang started with a friendly greeting before going into a serious tone. "However, I would have welcomed you if you're visiting alone, but am afraid it's too much for you to bring along 5 army battalions. Don't get me wrong. I heard there's a huge blood gem mineral vein in the Starfire Wilderness, and am worried it might fall into the wrong hands. Hence I came forth with my people to protect this area while you're away," said Green Flame Territorial Lord with a smile. Chapter 26-29. The embarrassed Green Flame Territorial Lord. "Protect it? I'll have to thank you then, Green Flame Territorial Lord," replied Jian Wushuang. "You don't have to. The Northern Darkstar Territory and our Green Flame Star Territory are connected geographically. We should be helping each other," teased the Green Flame Territorial Lord. "In this case, you won't have to protect the blood gem mineral vein any more now that I've returned. You may now leave," said Jian Wushuang. "That won't do." The Green Flame Territorial Lord shook his head. "I've reported to Crimson Stone Fort about the blood gem mineral vein on your way back here. The Crimson Stone Fort has also dispatched some experts to retrieve this, and had specifically ordered us to take good care of it before their arrival. Therefore, all of you will have to wait for Crimson Stone Fort's representatives." Jian Wushuang's expression turned cold after hearing that. "It seems the Green Flame Star Territory isn't going to leave. I can only use a little trick to make you leave if that's the case." "Did you ask me to leave?" "You're quite confident, but I don't know where your confidence is coming from," the Green Flame Territorial Lord sneered, and could not care less about Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang was not angry, but merely flipped his palm slowly. Buzz, buzz, buzz. 9 black infernal crimson, divine swords appeared out of thin air in the void before Jian Wushuang. Those 9 infernal crimson divine swords each carried an infinite amount of transmigration strength. "Are you going to fight?" "With that?" The Green Flame Territorial Lord said disdainfully. "Master, Song Hung and the other commanders frowned. However, Jian Wushuang merely smiled faintly before those 9 black infernal crimson divine swords instantly transformed into 9 huge meteorites and fiercely slammed toward the green flame territorial lord ahead. The green flame territorial lord stood calmly on the spot until the 9 huge meteorites appeared in front of him. His eyes narrowed slightly when the meteorites' power spread out. These 9 black swords seemed quite powerful. The green flame territorial lord immediately took a shot and slammed the 9 swords with a sledgehammer that appeared in his hands. A peak earth ultimate god's divine power completely exploded with shocking power. Clang, 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 clang. After 9 continuous clanging sounds, the 9 huge meteorites transformed from the infernal crimson divine sword were sent flying out. The meteorites' terrifying power then collided with the green flame territorial lord and was forced to retreat a few steps backward. This kid seems to be much stronger than an ordinary high-level Earth ultimate gods. The green flame territorial lord held his hands together and prepared to make a move. Suddenly, congeal! Jian Wushuang only said a one-word command before the 9 infernal crimson divine swords instantly overlapped at an astonishing speed and caused a huge, endless reincarnation passage to appear out of nowhere. A black divine sword encased in transmigration strength shot out from the end of that channel. The black divine sword was the result of a perfect sword formation made from the 9 overlapping infernal crimson divine swords. Boom! The black divine sword was like a huge awl with a terrifying power that penetrated the void and instantly appeared in front of the green flame territorial lord. To this power, the green flame territorial lord was shocked upon feeling the power contained therein the black divine sword that was much stronger than him executing a blow with his full strength. He was so horrified that he did not have much time to think and could only spontaneously swing the large hammer in his hand as the ripples spread out before firing a series of attacks. Boom! There was a loud noise as terrifying powers erupted from the black divine sword, and the large hammer broke away from the green flame territorial lord's hand for the first time. The black divine sword did not stop but continued to bombard the green flame territorial lord's divine body. Puff! The green flame territorial lord shook slightly before spewing out a big mouthful of blood. His complexion instantly paled along with his Bodhis divine power breath dropped to an extremely low level. Buzz! The transmigration sword formation formed from the 9 overlapping infernal crimson divine swords returned to Jian Wushuang. Green flame territorial lord, I'll give you a chance. 10 breaths. You and your people are to immediately return to the green flame star territory within just 10 breaths of time. Otherwise, you'll lie here forever. Jian Wushuang folded his hands behind his back with his extremely cold gaze as he stared at the green flame territorial lord. His mighty voice reverberated throughout heaven and earth. The green flame territorial lord was trembling as he met Jian Wushuang's gaze. Though his eyes were filled with resentment, they were filled with even more fear and reverent awe. Jian Wushuang had just displayed a terrifying strength level, which was too strong. The green flame territorial lord was perplexed as he could see that Jian Wushuang was only a high-level Earth ultimate god, yet Jian Wushuang's sword formation defeated him in an instant. The green flame territorial lord would probably be dead had Jian Wushuang not held back his strength. He knew that Jian Wushuang's strength level was far beyond his own. He dared not defy Jian Wushuang's command for him and his people to leave within 10 breaths. Let's go. The Green Flame Territorial Lord immediately ordered the Green Flame Star Territory Official Army to retreat. The Green Flame Territorial Lord, along with his official army, quickly left within a few breaths toward the Green Flame Star Territory. The commanders of the Northern Dark Star territory watched in awe and were completely stunned. They were just saying that Jian Wushuang would not be able to change anything due to his inferior high-level Earth Ultimate God battle strength against the peak Earth Ultimate God Green Flame Territorial Lord, even if he returned. Jian Wushuang surprisingly made a boldly lighting fast shot and defeated the Green Flame Territorial Lord in the blink of an eye. The strength gap was too wide apart. Jian Wushuang's strength completely exceeded their expectations. Our Territorial Lord has instantly defeated the Peak Earth Ultimate God Green Flame Territorial Lord. He's so powerful. I remember he was far from being this powerful when he fought San Shouwang not long ago. It didn't take long for him to improve until this level, right? He's so powerful. The commanders looked at Jian Wushuang with deep awe and reverence. Song Heng. Jian Wushuang glanced at Song Heng. Bring some people to take over the mineral vein and try to figure out in the shortest time possible the quantity of blood gem we have in the mineral vein, since the Green Flame Star Territories people are gone. Yes. Song Heng obeyed the order and immediately left with some people to do the surveying before presenting the results quite soon to Jian Wushuang. Chapter 2630. A visitor from the Crimson Stone. Fort. It's more than 3 billion caddies, perhaps somewhere between 3 to 4 billion? Jian Wushuang was surprised to hear the numbers from Song Heng. The market price for 1 caddy of blood gem was worth 10 primordial stones. 3 billion caddies of blood gem would cost a whopping 30 billion primordial stones. Unfortunately, we can't bag it all. Jian Wushuang smiled bitterly along with the commanders next to him, showing an equally helpless expression. It would be fortunate if they would own up 1% of the entire blood gem's wealth. How long will it take for those from Crimson Stone Fort to arrive? Jian Wushuang asked. They're already on the way. You can expect them to be here within 10 days, replied Song Heng. Within 10 days? Well, wait for them, then, said Jian Wushuang. 8 days passed. Jian Wushuang stayed in the Blood Gems camp throughout those 8 days. Master, Song Heng came in to report, the people from Crimson Stone Fort have arrived, but, Jian Wushuang asked. That inspector is their leader, said Song Heng. Inspector? Jian Wushuang was puzzled. Oh, you mean the inspector who deliberately made things difficult for me before I became the Territorial Lord. The one who asked me for benefits, but I told him off, right? Yes, it's him. I find out that he's called Genie Heng and does have a certain background in Crimson Stone Fort. I heard he's a direct disciple of a certain faction in Crimson Stone Fort. 4 people came with him this time, and the 4 of them are Peak Earth Ultimate Gods, if my senses are correct, said Song Heng solemnly. We do have a bit of trouble here. I've offended him before, and he might make things hard for me, since he's here as an inspector. Jian Wushuang smiled bitterly, but did not care too much. Let's go and meet the inspector first. Jian Wushuang went with Song Heng to the void outside their camp. The menace-looking purple-robed man, Jin Yihang, stood up in the void while peeping down at the blood gem mineral vein below. Thanks. It's way too big. How much exactly is it worth? I'm afraid it's worth a few 10 billion primordial stones. Jin Yihang was admiring the wealth contained in the mineral vein, according to Northern Darkstar Territory Official Army's message. The blood gems contained in this mineral vein are more than 3 billion caddies, with its value being more than 30 billion primordial stones, reported a Peak Earth Ultimate God behind him. 30 billion primordial stones. The other Peak Earth Ultimate Gods were shocked and began discussing. I really didn't expect there would be such a large mineral vein in an ordinary stellar region. Their territorial lord is going to make a fortune. Yes, according to Crimson Stone Fort's rules, we should reward the Stellar Region, who discovered and reported to the Crimson Stone Fort of such valuable natural treasures like mineral veins. In this case, Crimson Stone Fort will only take away 90% of the treasures and give the remaining 10% to the territorial lord as a reward. It's impossible to leave 1/10 worth of such a huge treasure that's more than 30 billion primordial stones behind. I'm guessing that 1% is probably the capping amount. It's worth more than 300 million primordial stones, even at only 1%. Many Heaven Ultimate Gods' net worths are less than 100 million primordial stones. This territorial lord has hit it big. The 4-peak Earth Ultimate Gods were green with envy during their conversation. They envied the Northern Dark Star territorial lord. Jin Yihang was unhappy when he heard their conversation. What nonsense! Jin Yihang rebuked. Listen up. No one will bring up the reward later. Northern Darkstar territory is under Crimson Stone Fort's jurisdiction and even manages the entire Danyang Holy Domain. Crimson Stone Fort is out to mine it since a blood gem mineral vein appears in the Danyang Holy Domain. What does it have to do with the Northern Darkstar territorial lord? The 4-peak Earth Ultimate Gods looked at each other and did not say anything, but they knew what was going. Jin Yihang did not want to leave anything for the Northern Darkstar territorial lord and wanted to take the share that was supposed to be the Northern Darkstar territorial lord's. Jian Wushuang, Song Heng, and the other commanders had emerged from the camp and soon appeared in front of Jin Yihang. A pleasure to meet Master Inspector. Jian Wushuang bowed, slightly while maintaining a humble posture in front of the inspector. Jian Yi, I didn't expect to meet you again so soon. Jin Yihang coldly stared at Jian Wushuang. He still remembered how he had suffered a loss from Jian Wushuang and was being resentful. I haven't seen you for many years, but you still haven't changed a bit. Jian Wushuang smiled faintly. Let's not carry on with the small talks. I'm here to first confirm whether there are such a large amount of blood gems mineral vein here. Crimson Stone Fort will naturally send a higher-level expert to acquire it upon confirmation. You should show me around this mineral vein at this instance, said Jin Yihang. No problem. Jian Wushuang smiled faintly. He beckoned Song Heng to take Jin Yihang and the others to survey the blood gem mineral vein. They were done with the survey in just a few moments. It's indeed a huge blood gem mineral vein. The amount of blood gems within is a lot and of extremely high value. Jin Yihang tightly clasped his hands with an excited expression. However, he soon calmed down and peered coldly at Jian Wushuang. I've checked the blood gem mineral vein, and we now shall wait for the high-level experts from Crimson Stone Fort to arrive, acquire, and start mining it. There's nothing for you to do here, so you can go back for the time being. Jian Wushuang's face sank, but did not make a move. Jin Yihang told them to leave, but said nothing about the benefits and rewards they deserved to get. Master Inspector, the Northern Darkstar territory must be handed over the Crimson Stone Fort when something like the blood gem mineral vein appears according to Crimson Stone Fort's rules. If I remember correctly, doesn't Northern Darkstar territory also get to keep a portion of it? Said Jian Wushuang. Is there such a rule? Why don't I know of it? Jin Yihang pretended to be puzzled and even glanced at the 4-peak Earth Ultimate Gods behind him. Do we really have this rule in Crimson Stone Fort? The 4-peak Earth Ultimate Gods looked at each other and denied the existence of that rule out of fear they would offend Jin Yihang. Jian Yi, you heard it yourself. Crimson Stone Fort doesn't have this rule at all. You were wrong. Jin Yihang smiled evilly. Chapter 2631. 1 against 4. I was wrong. Jian Wushuang narrowed his eyes slightly. What Master Inspector means is that this blood gem mineral vein has nothing to do with Northern Darkstar territory. That's exactly what I mean. Jin Yihang smiled sinisterly. All right. Jian Wushuang glanced at Jin Yihang before turning around and left. Jin Yihang was smiling even wider when he saw that. However, Commander Song Hung, Jian Wushuang ordered, "Tell the official army to retreat immediately and head back to the Northern Darkstar territory." Yes, Song Hung obeyed. "Wait." Jin Yihang was in horror and said in a low voice, "Jian Yi, what are you doing?" Jian Wushuang turned around and sneered. "Isn't it strange for you to ask this question, Master Inspector? You said that this blood gem mineral vein has nothing to do with my Northern Darkstar territory. In that case, the official army doesn't need to spend their time guarding this area. I'll leave this completely to you. Let's go." Jian Wushuang led Song Hung and the remaining commanders away. They were about to leave the area. "Stop," Jin Yihang shouted in a low voice. "You can go, but the official army has to stay." "Why is that so?" Jian Wushuang asked quizzically. "No particular reason. I need your official army," said Jin Yihang. He could not help it. He could care less if Jian Wushuang had left, and was what he wanted. However, he did not think the same about the official army. The blood gem mineral vein is so huge, hence it's quite difficult to mine, and would need many cultivators to work mining it. They would need to monitor and guard the many cultivators mining the mineral vein to prevent things from going wrong. Jin Yihang was an inspector sent by the Crimson Stone Fort, but only had 5 people in the team, including himself. The 5 were enough to guard the blood gem mineral vein, but were short-handed to fully monitor the mining activities and ensure the cultivators did not secretly hide a stash of the blood gems. A little carelessness was enough to lead to complete riots with many blood gems gone by then. That was why he needed the official army. The mining of blood gem would be safe and secure with 2 or 3 out of the 10 battalions guarding the mineral vein. Even though stealing seemed inevitable, the impact would not be big. Jian Wushuang knew Jin Yihang's intentions as he cracked a smile and said, "Master, you won't give the Northern Darkstar territory any benefits, but want my official army to guard the blood gem mineral vein. Can there be such a good deal in life? I don't care much, but you'll have to ask these commanders if they are willing to guard it for you." Song Hung and several other commanders who were behind Jian Wushuang stared at Jin Yihang with indifferent expressions. Although they were not in a position to protest due to the other party's identity, they looked extremely dissatisfied. What a joke! Who would be willing to work without any returns? Jin Yihang's complexion gradually became ugly under the few commanders' gaze. "Let's go." Jian Wushuang waved his hand again. Jin Yihang's complexion turned ashen. "Humph, you have to get my consent before leaving here. The 4 of you go get and kill them if they dare resist," ordered Jin Yihang coldly. The 4 Peak Earth ultimate gods behind Jin Yihang looked at each other and immediately stepped forward. "Sorry, we're only following orders," said a white-robed middle-aged man among the 4. "Just surrender yourself so that you'll suffer less. Otherwise," said an old man with red eyebrows. Jian Wushuang's expression turned cold as the 4 Peak Earth ultimate gods approached. Buzz, 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 buzz. The transmigration power-filled infernal crimson divine swords were suspended in front of Jian Wushuang. Song Hung and the other commanders were staring at Jian Wushuang behind him. Those commanders were merely Peak Ultimate Gods and unable to fight against the Peak Earth Ultimate Gods. Hence Jian Wushuang was their only hope in walking away safely. They had witnessed how Jian Wushuang defeated the Green Flame Territorial Lord, who was also a Peak Earth Ultimate God. However, There were 4 peak Earth ultimate gods in front of Jian Wushuang at that moment. Congeal. Jian Wushuang indifferently said. The 9 infernal crimson divine swords immediately overlapped at an astonishing speed before causing a huge and endless reincarnation passage to appear out of thin air. A black divine sword encased with the transmigration power shot out from the end of that passage. The first level of transmigration sword formation. Heaven's Edge. Boom. The black divine sword was like a huge awl with a terrifying power that went straight at the 4 peak Earth ultimate gods. So stubborn. How dare you fire the first shot when facing 4 of us? He can't blame us since he has a death wish. The 4 peak Earth ultimate gods' expressions became cold as the 4 took action together. The 4 of them discharged their divine power breath and were noticeably much stronger than the green flame territorial lord. Any one of them was more powerful than that of the green flame territorial lord. The 4 of them then joined forces. As a result, boom, 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 boom. 4 consecutive collisions blasted in the void before 4 people were sent flying like cannonballs. The 4 people spewed blood as their divine power breath instantly died down along with the explosions. Jian Wushuang was concurrently fighting alone against the 4 peak Earth ultimate gods. The 4 peak Earth ultimate gods were completely defeated in just one blow. Humph! Jian Wushuang snorted coldly. The black divine sword that resembled a huge all shook slightly before a monstrous power erupted from it and charged toward Jin Yihang in the void. *T. Jin Yihang was taken aback. How could he think of resisting the blow as a merely high-level Earth ultimate god when even 4 peak Earth ultimate gods had been hit hard from the black divine sword's impact? No, stop it! Jin Yihang hysterically pleaded. However, the black divine sword did not hold back and went straight at his divine body. Jin Yihang's physical protection methods collapsed as the terrifying power instantly passed through his body. Chapter 2632. Condition Boom. Jin Yihang felt that he was hit hard by a huge world with its power grinding his body. His internal organs were displaced as blood poured out from his eyes, nose, ears, and mouth. The impact would be enough to instantly kill Jin Yihang had Jian Wushuang not held back toward the end. Whoosh! Jin Yihang barely managed to stand firm in the void with his pale face, whereas his body was trembling violently. His divine power breath was at its weakest, as though he could be completely wiped out at any time. Song Heng and several other commanders watched in disbelief. They knew that Jian Wushuang's combat power was at the peak Earth ultimate god level and should be considered extremely strong among peak Earth ultimate gods upon seeing Jian Wushuang defeat the green flame territorial lord. However, they had never expected Jian Wushuang's combat prowess to be so strong. The 4 peak Earth ultimate gods who joined forces were instantly defeated without breaking a sweat. His combat prowess level was probably comparable with Heaven ultimate gods, right? How dare you hurt me? Jin Yihang's eyes widened, followed by a loud shriek as he was looking at Jian Wushuang in malice and folly. Hurt you? The corner of Jian Wushuang's lips was slightly raised. No, I'm afraid you've misunderstood. Believe it or not only would I dare hurt you, but I also dare kill you too. Jian Wushuang's smiling expression looked like a devilish smile to Jin Yihang at that moment. No, you absolutely will not dare. I'm an inspector from the Crimson Stone Fort. Crimson Stone Fort will never let you go if you kill me. Jin Yihang roared with his deliberate loud tone and seemed to be cheering for himself. He firmly believed that Jian Wushuang would only hurt him at most, and never thought that Jian Wushuang would ever kill him. Otherwise, Jian Wushuang would have killed him just now, when he got the chance. Jian Wushuang looked at Jin Yihang and sneered. You're really stupid. So what if I kill you? Don't forget that the blood gem mineral vein is still in my hands. I believe many factions will be interested in this mineral vein if I release the news. Would the likes of Nanwu Palace, Divine Demon Sect, Life and Death Tower, Dongfang Clan, and such care about the Crimson Stone Fort? Do you think they won't accept it were Edo share this mineral vein with them in return for their protection? Jin Yihang was horrified. His pride, self-righteousness, and envious background in the Crimson Stone Fort collapsed. He might be full of himself, but he was no fool. He knew what Jian Wushuang said was true. Jian Wushuang was indeed capable of killing him on the spot. Jin Yihang's attitude began to change after recognizing the fact. Northern Dark Star, Territorial Lord. No, Master Jin Yihang forced a smile on his face. That's just a misunderstanding. We can slowly talk about it now. Talk about it? What do you want to talk about? Jian Wushuang sneered. Jin Yihang's divine power breath was extremely weak as he quickly took out a few elixir pills and swallowed them. He opened his mouth after a couple of breaths, while still feeling a little weak, and said, the blood gem mineral vein appeared in Northern Dark Star territory and was acquired by the official army earlier. Northern Dark Star territory can indeed keep a part of the wealth after alerting the Crimson Stone forward of its existence according to the rules. However, this blood gem should be of no use to you, so we will replace it with primordial stones. Crimson Stone Fort will fork out 50 million primordial stone as a reward for Northern Dark Star territory who discovered and guarded this blood gem mineral vein. How about that? 50 million primordial stones. Song Hung and the other commanders were shocked and overjoyed. Primordial stones in the millions were exorbitant to those peak ultimate god commanders, as many of them could not earn even 1 million primordial stones in their lifetime. It was not hard to imagine how happy they were with those 50 million primordial stones. They had never seen such a huge amount of primordial stones ever since they started cultivation. On the other hand, Jian Wushuang was a little dissatisfied when he heard the amount. 50 million primordial stones is too little. Are you trying to dismiss beggars? Don't forget that this blood gem mineral vein is huge with its value of more than 30 billion primordial stones. How dare you offer us 50 million primordial stones? Jin Yihang was a little embarrassed and spoke again after a little hesitation. 100 million primordial stones. Nothing more. 100 million. The few commanders gasped. Jian Wushuang groaned slightly. 100 million primordial stones was not much for Jian Wushuang at that moment. However, he knew that he was merely a territorial lord with a combat power of at most heaven ultimate god. The Crimson Stone Fort was considered a powerful force to Jian Wushuang, so he could not ask for too much. Just as previously described, Crimson Stone Fort was taking the meat while Northern Dark Star territory could only just have its gravy. He got 100 million out of the 30 billion primordial stones. 1/300th was still quite a lot. Just 100 million then, but I have a condition, said Jian Wushuang. What condition? Jin Yihang glanced over. I don't need primordial stones. I want divine elixir pills. You'll have to replace the 100 million primordial stones with an equivalent amount of divine elixir pills, which comes to 20 divine elixir pills, said Jian Wushuang. Jin Yihang roared. No way. A divine elixir pills market price is worth 5 million primordial stones. However, the fact remains that you might not even be able to exchange them for a single divine elixir pill, even if you fork out 10 million primordial stones. Although Crimson Stone Fort has an extraordinary background and a lot of elixir pills, well, never give away 20 divine elixir pills as a reward. It's simply impossible. Jin Ehang paused before continuing. 15, at most 15 divine elixir pills. I have to get approval from the Crimson Stone Fort's high-level management to personally agree to this condition for this. Just 15 it is. You may get the approval now. Jian Wushuang smiled. He never expected to get 20 divine elixir pills and thought it was quite good if they could get even 10. 15 was beyond his expectations. According to his estimations, he would need about 20 divine elixir pills to make a breakthrough from peak ultimate god to primary level earth ultimate god. He had already obtained 4 divine elixir pills and would have 19 divine elixir pills when he received the 15 from Crimson Stone Fort. It should allow him to attempt a breakthrough to the primary level Earth Ultimate God realm. Chapter 2633. Earth Ultimate God Jin Ehang sent a message to the Crimson Stone Fort's higher-ups and soon received a response. Jian E. Crimson Stone Fort agreed to 15 divine elixir pills. Lord King Scorpion will soon arrive from Crimson Stone Fort a few days later and personally give you the divine elixir pills, said Jin Ehang. The corner of Jian Wushuang's mouth was slightly raised. Let's go. Jian Wushuang waved his hand and headed back to the camp with Song Heng and the other commanders, ignoring Jin Ehang and his entourage. Back in the camp. I can't believe that Crimson Stone Fort agreed to 15 divine elixir pills. I thought it's already extremely generous of Crimson Stone Fort to give tens of millions of primordial stones, who knew they would agree to give 15 divine elixir pills. This is also because our territorial lord is powerful. I'm afraid this inspector would have really not given us even a single primordial stone and make us work in vain if our territorial lord was someone ordinary. Although, well be dissatisfied, there's nothing we can do about it. A few commanders were sighing and admiring Jian Wushuang. Territorial lord, did you know that the Crimson Stone Fort higher-ups would agree to your request for 15 divine elixir pills? Song Heng looked at Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang shook his head before continuing. No, I wasn't sure. Although I'm not sure whether they'll agree to give me 15 divine elixir pills, they'll agree to give us a huge sum of primordial stones, as they aren't as stupid as Jin Ehang. This rule of the stellar region, having a share of the wealth upon the discovery of any valuable resources in their stellar regions, has been enforced by the Crimson Stone Fort for a long time to satisfy the stellar region's territorial lord and official army. Take this blood gem mineral vein as an example. If the Northern Darkstar territory hands over to the Crimson Stone Fort without receiving any benefits, the Northern Darkstar territory will never again do so for any new resources in the future. Secondly, even if Crimson Stone Fort used some despicable means and forced us to guard the blood gem mineral vein, our armies will be dissatisfied and might even do a lousy job of monitoring and guarding. The official army might even pocket some blood gems, which caused Crimson Stone Fort to end up losing even more. Crimson Stone Fort won't be so stupid to make that sort of decision. The commanders nodded in agreement. A few days later, Jian Wushuang arrived with a few official army commanders in the void above the blood gem mineral vein. Jin Ehang and the others respectfully stood there and waited as more than 10 black spots soon appeared in the void. Those more than 10 black spots were getting larger as they approached and soon appeared in front of Jian Wushuang in the blink of an eye. Jin Ehang meets Lord Scorpion King. Jin Ehang and the 4 peak Earth ultimate gods behind him immediately bowed and saluted before Jian Wushuang, and the official army commanders followed suit. Jian Wushuang was observing those people's strength at the same time. He was quite shaken up after his observation. The more than a dozen people were experts above the heaven ultimate god realm, especially the beefy middle-aged man, Lord King Scorpion King, wearing black armor, and leading the group. His divine power breath had completely exceeded the heaven ultimate god realm. He was a grand ultimate god. Crimson Stone Fort had sent a grand ultimate god along with more than a dozen heaven ultimate gods. It only showed how much attention the Crimson Stone Fort paid toward the blood gem mineral vein. Genie Hung, Jean Yan's younger generation, the beefy middle-aged man. Lord King Scorpion glanced at Genie Hung and snorted softly. The light snort seemed insouciant, but Jian Wushuang saw and got the idea. He could see that Lord King Scorpion was a bit displeased with Genie Hung, to be precise with Jin Yen. Are they from different factions? Jian Wushuang muttered secretly. He knew that Crimson Stone Fort was divided into many factions. Those factions fought overtly and covertly, but matters never got too ugly. The Lord King Scorpion's behavior toward Jin Yen and Jin Yihang clearly showed that they were not part of his faction. Are you the Northern Darkstar Territorial Lord? Lord King Scorpion looked at Jian Wushuang again. Yes. Jian Wushuang nodded in neither a humble nor pert manner. Here are the 15 divine elixir pills that you wanted. Lord King Scorpion waved and threw an interspatial ring over before saying, I've given the divine elixir pills to you, but I hope the blood gem mineral vein mining will go smoothly with no more changes. Otherwise, Master, don't worry. Our Northern Darkstar Territory Official Army will go all out to ensure there will be no problems in mining the blood gems, said Jian Wushuang. That's good. Lord King Scorpion nodded. Commander Tsang Hung, let's start mining, said Jian Wushuang. Yes. Tsang Hung immediately acted. Jian Wushuang had already sent someone to gather cultivators for mining the blood gems before Lord King Scorpion, and the others even turned up. The refinement materials for Heavenly Treasure's blood gems were not easy to mine, as it's extremely hard and buried deep underground. Hence, cultivators who worked on mining must at least be in the divine demon realm, precisely second-class divine demons, and even first-class divine demons. They must also possess a tyrannical divine power foundation before they could mine the blood gems. Jian Wushuang did not hesitate to spend a lot of money and brought in a large number of divine demons from other wildernesses for that reason. A few 10,000 divine demon realm cultivators were gathered as a result of Jian Wushuang promising them a lot of benefits in return. A few 10,000 cultivators had started mining under Jian Wushuang's commands, while the official army dispatched 4 army battalions to guard the area, whilst the others returned to Northern Darkstar territory. As for Jian Wushuang, he returned to the camp and immediately began seclusion cultivation. Jian Wushuang sat cross-legged in an exquisite attic completely covered by the restrictive shield with the 19 divine elixir pills before him. I hope the 19 diviner elixir pills won't let me down. Jian Wushuang was excited as he began to absorb and refine those divine elixir pills. Time flew past in the blink of an eye, and soon a month had passed. Jian Wushuang had been sitting with his eyes closed in the attic, where he suddenly shook before sharply opening his eyes that shone brightly. The divine power breath from his body was many times stronger than before. What good luck! Although I've only swallowed 19 divine elixir pills, I still managed to make a breakthrough. Am now an Earth Ultimate God. Chapter 2634. Royal Blood Gem. There was a huge gap between the strength of an Earth Ultimate God and an ordinary Ultimate God. Jian Wushuang went from the peak Ultimate God realm to the primary level Earth Ultimate God realm. Thereby, his overall strength was greatly improved. Now, even if I don't use the stately painting and settle with just having a few secret techniques, I should be able to compete against the ordinary heaven ultimate gods. Jian Wushuang clasped his hands tightly. He looked surprised. Soon, Jian Wushuang walked out of the attic. After walking out, he did not deliberately conceal his aura. He was originally giving away the aura of a primary level Earth Ultimate God. Under the cover of the black stone, he exuded an aura of a peak Earth Ultimate God. Jian Wushuang went up into the void and wandered around the blood gem mineral vein. Tens of thousands cultivators were gathered in the huge mineral vein, mining the blood gem. Suddenly, something that was happening on a big tree not far away attracted Jian Wushuang's attention. That big tree was located at a high place. Hence, it was conspicuous. However, what really caught Jian Wushuang's attention was that there were more than a dozen dead bodies hanging from the trunk of the big tree. Those corpses hanging from the tree trunk were obviously there as a warning. Tsang Heng, Jian Wushuang spoke, his voice echoing. Tsang Heng came up behind Jian Wushuang in just a jiffy. What's going on? Jian Wushuang pointed at the dozen corpses hanging from the tree and asked in a cold tone, Master, those people were killed by the inspector 10 days ago. Tsang Heng replied, It's such a big mineral vein with tens of thousands of people mining. Some people escaped the official army surveillance and stole some of the blood gems. This is inevitable. However, the inspector did an ad hoc body search on some cultivators who were mining. He forcibly searched for some treasures on them. As a result, more than a dozen people were found to be hiding some blood gems. In fact, the amount found on them wasn't much, mostly 1 caddy or 2 caddies. The inspector killed them nonetheless, and then left them hanging on the tree. Besides, he also reprimanded the official army for not doing a good job. Jian Wushuang frowned slightly after hearing it. He knew that was beating the dog before the lion to serve as a deterrent to the miners. The inspector had not done anything wrong, but Jian Wushuang thought that the inspector was heavy-handed. Did Genie Hong ask to check the official army's interspatial rings? Jian Wushuang asked. No, he didn't, answered Tsang Heng. Okay, pass the order to those divine demon realm miners that it'll pay them 3 times more than the original agreed amount after they're done with it. Tell them to work honestly and don't try to get out of line. Otherwise, they might survive if the official army found out, but they won't be that lucky with the inspector. I won't be able to save them if it happens, said Jian Wushuang. Yes. Tsang Heng nodded. By the way, have you distributed the primordial stones that I gave to all the army brothers? Jian Wushuang asked. Yes, it's all done. Tsang Heng cracked a smile immediately. Master, you gave us 10 million primordial stones at one go. All of us got quite a fair bit after the division. The peak divine demon realm armies received around hundreds each, primary-level ultimate god sergeants, and high-level ultimate god captains received a little bit more, and of course, the commanders enjoyed a bigger amount. The brothers in the army are very grateful for Master. Tsang Heng was telling the truth. Jian Wushuang received 15 divine elixir pills from Crimson Stone Fort, which he needed all of it for himself. Then again, he would never mistreat his official army, so he took out 10 million primordial stones to distribute among the armies. There were 10,000 men in each battalion, and there were altogether 10 battalions. Each of the armies got a fair share from the pool of primordial stones, especially the 10 commanders. They were grateful to their territorial lord, Jian Wushuang. Okay, let the brothers continue to be on guard. I'll fork out another batch of primordial stones to distribute among the brothers when the mining is over and the Crimson Stone Fort officials have left. Jian Wushuang smiled, waved his hand, and returned to the camp. Then he began cultivating on his own. Thereafter, the blood gem mining was progressing smoothly. With Jian Wushuang's promise, many of the divine demon realm miners were able to keep mining with a peace of mind. There were not many of them who would risk getting caught stealing the blood gems. Actually, they had no idea what the blood gem was and how much it cost. They would not want to risk the consequences of stealing when Jian Wushuang had clearly given them a good promise. In addition, what Genie Hong did earlier served the deterrence effect. 2 years had passed. This mineral vein was extremely huge, and there were billions of caddies of blood gems. It was extremely high in value, and it was extremely difficult to mine. Therefore, after the few 10,000 demon realm cultivators had been mining for 2 years, they had only managed to complete 1/3 of it. Back in the camp, Jian Wushuang was sitting in the attic, quietly comprehending the Fenshin scroll. Without warning, Master, Song Heng's voice came from outside the attic. Jian Wushuang slowly opened his eyes. Commander Song Heng, what's the matter? Something is on. Come and have a look quickly. Song Heng sounded anxious. Jian Wushuang did not hesitate. He put away the Fengtian scroll and went out with Song Heng. Soon, Song Heng led Jian Wushuang to one of the mines. There were countless mines where the few tens of thousand people were mining. Jian Wushuang arrived at an ordinary mine. There were 2 commanders with several divine demon realm miners in the mine. Song Heng, what is going on? Jian Wushuang asked. Master, look at that. Song Heng pointed in one direction. Jian Wushuang glanced over, and what he saw was a stone wall in the mine. The stone wall was made of blocks of blood gems. The gems were in light, hazy blood color. Those gems were the blood gems. However, among the many blood gems on the stone wall, Jian Wushuang spotted a piece of gem in a much darker shade than the other blood gems. It was a complete blood red in color. The other blood gems were in a faint blood color, and some had blood streaks in them, but the one that Jian Wushuang saw was deep red in color like blood. Could this be the legendary royal blood gem? Jian Wushuang went wide-eyed in surprise, and his heart was beating fast.